A single cherry blossom petal, pale and almost translucent in the early evening light, drifts silently toward the surface of a dark, still pond. As it finally touches the water, a perfectly concentric ripple pushes gently outward, moving slowly across the reflection of ancient wooden eaves and the deep, rich green of moss-covered stones. The air here is entirely different. It carries the faint, sweet scent of damp earth, aged cedar wood, and the distant, lingering trace of sandalwood incense. You are stepping onto a stone path that has been smoothed by 1,000 years of quiet footsteps, winding beneath the arching branches of ancient maple trees that filter the twilight into soft, dappled patterns on the ground. The city of Kyoto breathes with a slow, deliberate rhythm, a rhythm that invites you to instantly match its pace, to let the hurried and chaotic speed of the modern world dissolve entirely into the shadows of the surrounding mountains. As you walk this lantern-lit path, the ambient noise of the day fades into the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant rhythmic strike of a bamboo water basin filling and emptying in a hidden garden. In this space, time does not rush forward. It pools, it circles, and it rests. As we wander together through the layered history and the quiet wonders of this ancient capital, there is absolutely nothing you need to hold on to. You do not need to try to remember these details or memorize these places. You do not need to actively listen. Just let your mind soften, like snow melting onto warm stone. Let these ideas, these images, and these fragments of history drift gracefully through your awareness. If your mind wanders, let it wander freely. If you drift down into sleep, let yourself drift. Whatever catches your attention is yours to enjoy, and whatever fades away was always meant to pass. What stays, stays. You're entirely safe to just be here, resting in the gentle current of these calm, continuous thoughts. We step carefully from the edge of the mossy garden onto the wide wooden veranda of an old aristocratic estate. As your foot presses lightly onto the polished dark wooden planks, a soft, high-pitched sound rises up from beneath the floorboards. It sounds exactly like the gentle chirping of a Japanese nightingale in the spring. This is not a creak of age, but a masterpiece of deliberate ancient engineering. Known as guisubari, or nightingale floors, these corridors were constructed centuries ago using special metal clamps and forged nails beneath the surface. When the slightest weight is applied, the metal rubs smoothly against the wood, creating a musical, bird-like trill. Originally, these singing floors were designed as a highly sensitive early warning system, a way for the shogun to be alerted to the quietest footsteps of any approaching intruder in the deep silence of the night. Yet, what was born from a need for intense security has miraculously transformed over the centuries into a sound of profound peace. Today, as visitors walk these beautiful halls in soft socks, the building softly sings to them, a collective chorus of mechanical birds that turn every single step into an instrument. The mind finds deep comfort in this beautiful transformation, realizing how a mechanism of fear and defense was slowly softened by time into a gentle, welcoming melody, reminding us that even the most guarded places can eventually become spaces of complete tranquility. The soft melody of the wooden floorboards slowly fades as we move toward the edge of a vast, tranquil lake, known as the Mirror Pond. Rising gracefully from the very edge of the water is a structure that seems to pull the sunlight directly out of the air, the golden pavilion known as Kinkaku-ji. The top 2 stories of this elegant Zen Buddhist temple are completely covered in pure, gleaming gold leaf. Against the dark, contrasting backdrop of ancient pine trees and the clear, open sky, the brilliance of the gold is breathtaking, but the true magic of this place lies in the still water below. The pavilion was meticulously designed by its architects to be viewed in its own reflection. On a calm, windless day, the surface of the pond perfectly mirrors the golden architecture, creating an exquisite illusion of a floating palace suspended gracefully between 2 skies. This deliberate, beautiful duplication speaks to a deep and ancient philosophical understanding. The physical building is impermanent, made of wood and vulnerable to the elements, yet its reflection in the quiet water remains untouchable, pure, and entirely eternal. When we gaze at the golden pavilion and its quiet mirrored twin, the mind is gently invited to consider the nature of reality itself. We find a deep, settling comfort in the idea that stillness allows us to reflect our own brightest, most golden qualities without any effort at all. Leaving the golden light behind, we find ourselves standing at the base of a densely wooded, emerald green mountain, where a completely different kind of architecture waits to guide us. Arching over the winding stone path is a towering wooden gate, painted in a striking, vibrant shade of vermilion orange. This is just the very first one. Behind it stands another and another, stretching out by the thousands to form a mesmerizing, continuous tunnel of color that winds endlessly up through the deep forest. Each of these wooden gates, called torii, has been generously donated by individuals and businesses over hundreds of years, meant to express deep gratitude for past successes and to quietly seek future prosperity. The bright vermilion color is highly traditional in Japan, long believed to ward off evil and protect against misfortune, while also acting as a natural preservative for the heavy wood. Walking slowly through this endless curving tunnel, the sunlight filtering down through the thick forest canopy catches the bright orange pillars, creating a hypnotic, rhythmic flickering of light and shadow, light and shadow. The visual repetition is incredibly soothing, acting almost like a calm visual heartbeat. It creates a safe, defined boundary, separating the chaotic world outside from the sacred, quiet space within. The mind appreciates this endless corridor because it offers a clear, unbroken path where absolutely no decisions need to be made. Just the simple, steady, deeply peaceful act of moving forward through a corridor built entirely of gratitude. We gradually descend from the mountain of orange gates and enter the quiet, narrow streets of the city's oldest historic districts. Lining these delicate avenues are the traditional dark wooden townhouses known as machiya. From the outside, they appear incredibly modest and compact, presenting only a narrow facade of dark, beautifully slatted wood to the street. Because property taxes in ancient Kyoto were once calculated entirely based on the width of the street frontage, ingenious merchants built their private homes to be incredibly narrow at the front, but stretching incredibly deep into the city block. This unique architectural style earned them the affectionate nickname of eel beds, but the true secret of the machiya lies hidden deep inside, away from the public eye. As you walk back through the long, dim, earth-floored hallway, the house suddenly and miraculously opens up to reveal a secret sunlit courtyard garden called a tsuboniwa. These tiny, perfectly cultivated pockets of nature are completely hidden from the outside world. They often feature a single, elegant maple tree, a weathered stone lantern, and perhaps a small, mossy basin of fresh water. These intimate gardens were designed not just for private beauty, but to draw natural light and cooling breezes into the very centre of the home during the humid summer months. The quiet existence of the tsuboniwa is a beautiful, comforting reminder that no matter how constrained or crowded our outward lives may seem to others, there is always room to cultivate a private, quiet space of nature and serenity deep within ourselves. The narrow wooden streets eventually open up to the wide, gentle expanse of the Kamo River, the flowing blue artery that bisects the entire city. The riverbanks are wide, open, and covered in soft green grass, serving for centuries as Kyoto's communal living room. As the cool evening sets in, an unspoken, universally respected phenomenon occurs quietly along these banks. Couples, close friends, and solitary readers come to sit by the rushing water, and without any painted signs, markings, or instructions, they naturally arrange themselves at perfectly equal intervals from one another. Looking softly down the long curving stretch of the river, you see a flawless, rhythmic spacing of people, a living, breathing testament to the profound Japanese concept of wa, or social harmony, and a deep intuitive respect for the personal space of others. No one ever crowds their neighbour. Everyone has exactly enough room to sit comfortably, to listen to the water rushing over the smooth stones, to watch the white herons glide low over the surface, and to feel the cool, descending evening breeze. The tired mind relaxes deeply in the sheer presence of such predictable, considerate order. It is incredibly comforting to know that we belong to a world capable of such silent, graceful cooperation, where space is freely given and quietly maintained, allowing everyone to simply be together, yet perfectly at peace in their own separate dreaming world. From the open, breezy riverbanks, the journey carries us gently westward, toward the lush edges of the city where the dark mountains rise steeply against the fading sky. Here, in the district of Arashiyama, is a forest completely unlike any other. Stepping onto the shaded dirt path, the sky above is suddenly woven with thousands of towering jade-green stalks of bamboo. They reach impossibly high into the air, leaning slightly inward to form a natural cathedral-like canopy that filters the world into endless layers of green, underwater light. But the most profound and settling experience of this ancient grove is not visual. It is entirely auditory. When the cool wind moves down from the high mountains and catches the leafy tops of the bamboo, the thick hollow stems sway gracefully and gently knock against one another. The sound is woody, deeply resonant, and wonderfully hollow, a deep organic percussion mixed with the vast breathy rustle of millions of tiny leaves. This sound is so culturally significant, so deeply woven into the emotional fabric of the region, that the national government officially recognized it as one of the protected soundscapes of Japan, a natural melody meant to be preserved for all future generations. The human mind evolved to find deep safety in the gentle rustling of nature. Listening to the wind play this vast wooden instrument washes away all lingering tension, leaving behind a sensation of being firmly anchored to the earth, while gazing peacefully up at the open sky. The deep, vibrant green of the bamboo slowly fades into the stark, incredibly clean white of raked gravel. We have arrived at the quiet veranda of ryoan-ji, the most famous Zen rock garden in all of Japan, a place dedicated entirely to the art of stillness. In an enclosed rectangular courtyard, set against an ancient earthen wall that has been stained softly by centuries of time and weather, 15 dark stones of varying sizes are carefully arranged in asymmetrical groups. They sit silently among an ocean of pristine, perfectly parallel lines of white sand. The garden is an undisputed masterpiece of minimalism, but it holds a quiet, profound, and universally comforting secret. It was masterfully designed so that from any single sitting position on the wooden viewing deck, it is physically impossible to see all 15 stones at once. The largest boulders always quietly obscure the smallest ones, depending entirely on your angle of view. If you slide slightly to the left to see a hidden stone, another stone instantly vanishes behind a different rock. You can only ever see 14. In a modern world that constantly demands we know everything, see everything, and control everything all at once, this garden offers a brilliant, profoundly soothing liberation. It teaches us the gentle beauty of incomplete knowledge. It reminds the weary mind that we are always looking from a specific, limited perspective, and that it is perfectly okay, even incredibly beautiful, not to see the entire picture all at once. True peace is found simply by appreciating the beautiful stones that are currently visible to us right now, and trusting calmly in the quiet presence of the ones we cannot see. While the profound stillness of the rock garden represents the quiet heart of Kyoto, the city also knows deeply how to channel its ancient energy into magnificent, purposeful movement. In the heavy, humid heat of midsummer, the city hosts the Gion Matsuri, a massive festival whose deep origins stretch back well over 1,000 years. Interestingly, it did not begin as a joyful celebration, but as a deeply earnest, desperate ritual of purification. Centuries ago, when the city was troubled by illness, the emperor decreed that a grand procession of shrines must be held to appease the spirits and clear the air. From that ancient protective instinct blossomed one of the most breathtaking displays of human craftsmanship in the world. The festival features massive, elaborately decorated wooden floats, some standing over 25 meters tall and weighing many tons, draped in priceless ancient tapestries. Yet, the absolute most astounding fact about these colossal, towering structures is that they are assembled entirely without the use of a single metal nail. Master craftsmen use a traditional, highly complex system of rope tying, lacing the enormous, heavy wooden beams together so perfectly that the immense structures can roll safely and smoothly through the narrow city streets. The mind is quietly fascinated by this ancient wisdom. Immense strength achieved entirely through flexibility rather than rigid resistance. By using natural ropes instead of iron nails, the towering floats can softly absorb the shocks and bumps of the uneven road, bending slightly and swaying gracefully without ever breaking. It is a gentle, lingering lesson in personal resilience, showing us that sometimes we're held together best not by driving hard, rigid nails into our foundation, but by weaving flexible, enduring bonds that allow us to move smoothly through the world. When the warm summer heat finally fades and the vast wheel of the year turns towards softer, cooler days, the city offers beautiful, quiet places to walk and simply let the mind unravel. Running peacefully along the base of the eastern mountains is a gentle, flowing canal lined entirely with hundreds of old cherry trees. This is the Tetsugaku no Michi, known as the Philosopher's Path. The stone walkway is deliberately uneven in places, following the soft, natural curve of the flowing water as it winds past small, mossy shrines, quiet residential gardens, and old wooden tea houses. It earns its thoughtful name from a prominent 20th century philosopher who walked this exact winding route every single day as a dedicated form of moving meditation. The path takes about 30 unhurried minutes to walk from end to end, a perfectly measured span of time to let a difficult thought completely dissolve or a worried mind finally settle. In the gentle spring, the trees explode into pale pink clouds of blossoms, which eventually fall like soft snow and blanket the surface of the canal in a floating, moving river of petals. But the path is deeply cherished in all seasons, offering the lush green shade of summer, the fiery, brilliant red leaves of autumn, and the stark, elegant, snow-dusted branches of winter. The very existence of this path quietly acknowledges that the mind sometimes needs a gentle rhythm of movement to finally find its stillness. Walking smoothly beside the flowing water, the steady cadence of our footsteps becomes a calming metronome, gradually slowing our racing thoughts until they flow as evenly, smoothly, and continuously as the quiet canal itself. The gentle, rhythmic walk along the water naturally brings us at last to a small, incredibly humble wooden tea room, tucked safely away behind a woven bamboo fence. Inside, the light is delightfully dim and soft, filtering gently through thick paper screens to illuminate the space in a warm, golden glow. The air is perfectly still, smelling slightly of roasted green tea and the sweet, earthy scent of damp tatami mats. The traditional Japanese tea ceremony was refined into its purest, most spiritual form right here in the quiet corners of Kyoto. It is a deeply moving choreography of profound grace, where every single, deliberate movement, from the careful wiping of the ceramic bowl with a silk cloth to the rhythmic whisking of the bright green matcha powder, is performed with absolute, unhurried, loving precision. At the absolute core of this beautiful ritual is a philosophical concept called Ichigo Ichie, which translates beautifully to one time, one meeting. It is the profound, settling realization that this exact moment will never, ever happen again in the entire history of the universe. Even if the exact same people meet in the exact same room to drink the exact same tea tomorrow, they will be slightly older, the weather outside will be slightly different, and the slant of the light will have changed. Therefore, this single quiet moment must be respected, cherished, and savoured as a completely unrepeatable miracle. As you lie here right now, listening to the slow rhythm of these words, this too is your own Ichigo-ichi. This exact arrangement of thoughts, this specific comfort, and this deep, beautifully encroaching rest is entirely unique to tonight. Embracing this truth frees the mind entirely from any lingering anxiety about the future and any heavy regrets about the past. All that exists, and absolutely all that matters, is the gentle, steady warmth of this precise present moment, dissolving softly and inevitably into the quiet, welcoming perfection of sleep. The dim, golden warmth of the tea room naturally softens, dissolving slowly into the cool, damp embrace of a hidden, breathing forest. We drift gently westward, toward the quiet edges of the Arashiyama Mountains, where the heavy wooden gates of Saihoji, affectionately known across the world as the Moss Temple, wait half hidden in the deep woodland shadows. Before anyone is permitted to step into the garden, they must first sit in absolute silence within the main hall, grinding their own dark ink and slowly tracing the ancient characters of a Buddhist sutra with a delicate brush. This quiet, mandatory ritual acts as a spiritual airlock, forcing the hurried modern mind to slow down and match the ancient glacial pace of the temple. Only then do the sliding doors open to reveal a landscape that feels entirely untouched by human hands. The ground is completely enveloped in a thick, undulating sea of deep green. There are over 120 distinct varieties of moss growing here, each creating its own microscopic forest of velvet textures, tiny star-shaped fronds, and delicate feathery plumes. Because moss requires immense humidity to thrive, the air in this garden is incredibly rich, heavy, and sweet, with the scent of damp earth and ancient cedar. The thick biological carpet acts as a massive natural acoustic dampener, swallowing all ambient noise and creating a profound, heavy silence. It is a stunning visual reminder that absolute beauty does not always require bright flowers or towering monuments. Sometimes, the most breathtaking landscapes are built quietly, over centuries, close to the damp earth, growing slowly and patiently in the cool shadows. Beneath this incredibly thick, quiet carpet of moss, beneath the twisting roots of the ancient maples and the paved stone streets of the modern city above, a vast, invisible world moves in total darkness. Kyoto is physically built upon a massive, naturally occurring underground basin, a hidden subterranean lake that contains more pure, fresh water than the entirety of Lake Biwa, Japan's largest surface lake. This immense, silent aquifer is the true, hidden lifeblood of the ancient capital. The water is naturally and endlessly filtered through deep, compressed layers of granite and ancient sand, rising to the surface through hidden wells in a state of absolute chemical perfection. It is this specific, exceptionally soft water that gives Kyoto's famous tofu its incredibly silky, melt-in-the-mouth texture. It is this water that allows the local sake to brew with such delicate floral notes, and it is this exact water that was drawn for the emperor's tea ceremonies centuries ago. Knowing that an entire, massive ocean of pure, silent water rests just beneath the bustling streets changes how the mind perceives the city. It provides a deep, subconscious sense of stability and endless nourishment. It whispers a gentle truth, that no matter how chaotic the surface of life may become, there is always a deep, pure and inexhaustible reservoir of calm resting quietly beneath the surface, waiting patiently to be drawn up whenever it is needed. This pure, hidden water eventually rises to the surface, finding its way into the delicate, precise hands of the city's master artisans in the old, atmospheric district of Nishijin. As you walk through these narrow, winding streets of dark, wooden houses, you can hear a rhythmic, muffled sound drifting through the paper windows, the steady, wooden clack, 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 clack of traditional jacquard looms. This is the historic heart of Nishijinori, a highly specialized, intensely complex method of silk weaving that has been refined over 1,000 years. The fabrics created here are so dense, so unbelievably intricate, that they look less like woven cloth and more like incredibly detailed three-dimensional paintings. Master weavers work with thousands of individual threads of pure silk, many of which are meticulously wrapped in microscopic layers of genuine gold and silver foil, creating a single, high-quality obi. The broad sash worn with a kimono can take many months of continuous, highly focused labour, often involving dozens of specialised craftspeople who dedicate their entire lives to mastering just one single step of the deeply complex process. As you listen to the rhythmic, imaginary clacking of the heavy wooden loom, you might notice your own breath settling into a steady, matching rhythm. There is no rush here. The mind can simply drift. You do not need to produce anything tonight. You can just let the steady, repetitive sound of the wooden shuttle gently weave a blanket of calm around your shoulders, appreciating the slow, methodical creation of something designed to last for generations. From the delicate, microscopic threads of shimmering silk, the mind travels smoothly eastward, lifting up into the densely forested hills where massive, ancient trunks of wood form one of the greatest architectural wonders of the ancient world. Clinging impossibly to the steep side of Mount Ottawa is Kiyomizu-dera, the Temple of the Pure Water. Extending out from the main hall, hovering 13 metres above the forest floor, is a vast wooden observation stage. What makes this massive structure truly astonishing is not just its size, but its profound engineering. The entire stage, capable of holding thousands of visitors, is supported entirely by a complex, interlocking forest of giant Zelkova wood pillars, some of which are hundreds of years old, and yet in the entire massive structure there is not a single metal nail. The ancient carpenters used a brilliant traditional jointing technique called kagumi, cutting the enormous logs with such absolute microscopic precision that they slide perfectly into one another, locking together with immense, unbreakable strength. This allows the entire temple to sway gracefully and safely during earthquakes, absorbing the shock of the earth without ever shattering. Looking out from this great suspended deck, watching the sun dip slowly behind the distant western mountains, the city below looks like a bowl filled with twilight. The mind finds deep reassurance in this ancient wood. It teaches us that true strength does not come from being rigid or driving hard iron into our foundations. True, lasting strength comes from deep connection, from how beautifully our different parts interlock, and from our ability to sway gently with the unexpected tremors of the world. Looking down from that great suspended height, the eye naturally traces the steep descent back down to the valley floor, where the rivers run wide and shallow through the heart of the city. Kyoto is framed by mountains on three sides, creating a natural basin that traps the thick, heavy humidity of the deep summer. Centuries ago, to escape this breathless heat, the people of Kyoto invented a brilliantly simple, deeply sensory solution known as noryoyuka. As the temperatures rise, restaurants and tea houses along the Kamo and Kibun rivers construct temporary open-air wooden dining platforms that extend entirely out over the flowing water. Sitting on one of these floating wooden decks as the evening sky turns a deep, bruised purple, the transformation of the air is immediate and magical. The fast-moving water below acts as a massive natural air conditioner, pulling the heavy heat away from the wood and sending a continuous, wonderfully cool breeze sweeping upward over the tatami mats. Small, pale paper lanterns are lit along the railings, casting a soft, flickering golden glow onto the dark, rushing water below. The sheer sensory relief of that cool air touching warm skin is profoundly relaxing. It is a beautiful testament to the human desire to work softly in harmony with nature, rather than fighting it. When the environment becomes too heavy or overwhelming, we do not always need to build a wall. Sometimes, we simply need to move closer to the water, lower our centre of gravity, and let the natural flowing currents of the world carry the heat away. following the gentle southward flow of that water, away from the dense mathematical grid of the city, the landscape gradually opens up into the wide, peaceful valley of Uji. Here, sitting quietly on the edge of a perfectly still lotus pond, is a building that looks entirely as though it has gently floated down from the sky. This is Byodo Inn, and its main structure is known as the Phoenix Hall. It is widely considered one of the most perfect, aesthetically balanced buildings ever constructed in human history. Its brilliant red walls and curving wing-like corridors were designed specifically to recreate the Buddhist vision of the Pure Land, the ultimate Western paradise, right here on the physical earth. It is so culturally revered, so instantly recognizable to the Japanese people, that its elegant symmetrical silhouette has been stamped onto the back of the 10-yen coin for decades. Perched proudly on the very highest peaks of the sweeping roof are two beautiful bronze phoenixes, catching the first and last light of the day. As you look at the absolute flawless symmetry of the building and its perfect undisturbed reflection in the dark water of the pond, a deep sense of equilibrium washes over the nervous system. The human brain is naturally wired to seek out and find comfort in profound balance. Gazing at the Phoenix Hall, even in the theatre of the mind, acts as a gentle visual anchor, pulling our own scattered asymmetrical thoughts back into a state of beautiful, quiet alignment. Surrounding this magnificent floating palace are the rolling, mist-draped hills that have made this specific region legendary across the globe. These are the ancient tea plantations of Uji, where the absolute finest, most deeply treasured green tea in Japan is grown. The fields are a mesmerizing geometric wonder, consisting of endless, perfectly manicured rows of vibrant green bushes curving smoothly over the soft contours of the earth. But the most remarkable fact about the highest grade of this tea, known as gyokuro, is how it is treated in the final crucial weeks before the spring harvest. The farmers completely cover the entire plantation with thick screens of woven bamboo and black straw, plunging the growing tea leaves into deep artificial shade. Starved of direct, easy sunlight, the resilient plants must work incredibly hard to survive, pushing massive amounts of chlorophyll and rich amino acids up into their tender uppermost leaves. This period of quiet, forced darkness is exactly what gives the final tea its profound, sweet, incredibly rich umami flavour, and its vibrant, almost glowing emerald colour. Sometimes, the most profound growth happens in the quiet dark. Just as the tea leaves gather their incredible richness away from the harsh, demanding sun, your mind naturally gathers its own strength as the body grows heavier, sinking safely and comfortably into the cool shadows of rest. You do not need to be in the bright light to be growing. You can let go of the wide green hills and allow your awareness to float smoothly back to the eastern edge of the city, coming to rest before a long, astonishingly narrow wooden building known as Sanjusangendo. It is officially the longest wooden structure in Japan, stretching an incredible 120 meters through a quiet gravel courtyard. But the true, breathtaking wonder of this place is hidden entirely behind its heavy wooden doors. As your eyes slowly adjust to the dim, incense-heavy air of the interior, a staggering sight gradually reveals itself. Standing shoulder to shoulder on rising tiered wooden platforms are exactly 1,001 life-sized, magnificently carved statues of Kannon, the multi-armed Buddhist deity of infinite mercy. They're all hand-carved from fragrant Japanese cypress and completely covered in pure, shimmering gold leaf. In the flickering low light of the temple candles, the endless rows of golden faces seem to stretch out into absolute infinity, creating a visual echo that completely overwhelms the logical mind in the most beautiful, peaceful way possible. Though they appear identical at first glance, each individual face was carved by a different master artisan over centuries, meaning no two expressions are exactly alike. There is an ancient, deeply comforting local legend that says, if you walk slowly enough down the long, silent corridor, scanning the rows of golden deities, you will eventually find the exact face of someone you love staring back at you. The sheer scale of devotion in this room wraps around you like a heavy, warm blanket, reminding the heart that mercy and compassion are infinite, deeply varied, and always present if you look closely enough. The mesmerizing infinite gold of the statues slowly gives way to a much softer, far more nuanced spectrum of light as we drift back out into the open air. Kyoto is a city that communicates profoundly through color, relying on an ancient, highly specific palette known as Dentu-iro, or traditional Japanese colors. These are not flat industrial paints, but living hues drawn directly from the natural world, each given a highly poetic, deeply evocative name. There is moegi, the very specific, tender, yellowish green of a freshly sprouted onion in early spring. There is Shinonome-iro, the incredibly pale, delicate pink that only exists in the eastern sky for a few fleeting minutes at the very edge of dawn. And there is Kamizochi, a deep, grounding, brownish purple born from the earth. Historically, these incredibly complex colours were extracted through painstakingly slow processes, boiling down the bark of cherry trees, crushing tiny insects, or soaking safflower petals in pure river water. The existence of this massive, delicate vocabulary of colour reveals a culture that pays exquisite, loving attention to the slightest shifts in the natural world. It is a gentle reminder that life is not painted in broad, aggressive strokes of black and white. It is made up of millions of soft, transitional shades. Recognizing these tiny, beautiful variations allows the mind to soften its grip on absolute certainty, learning to rest comfortably in the gentle, beautiful ambiguity of the fading twilight. These incredibly precise poetic colours do not merely exist on hidden spools of silk or faded swatches of fabric. They are periodically brought to breathtaking, massive life, flowing like a vivid river through the very centre of the modern city. Every year, as the heavy heat of summer breaks and the crisp air of October settles over the mountains, Kyoto hosts the Jidai Matsuri, the Festival of Ages. It is one of the most astonishing, surreal events on Earth, a massive, silent, moving museum. Thousands of local citizens dress in the painstakingly accurate, authentic attire of every single historical period of Kyoto's long, complex history. What makes this procession incredibly dreamlike is that it moves in reverse chronological order. It begins with the marching bands and woolen uniforms of the 19th century, and as the hours pass, it steps further and further backward in time. You see the elaborate layered silk robes of the Heian period court, the heavy lacquered armour of the warring samurai, and the simple, earth-toned garments of the ancient founders. Walking slowly down the wide, paved avenues of the modern city, the only sound is the quiet, rhythmic rustle of thousands of layers of ancient silk brushing against one another and the soft padding of straw sandals on the asphalt. It is a magnificent, hypnotic collapsing of time. Centuries of human joy, struggle and artistry are flattened out into one single, continuous, beautiful parade. Watching this gentle river of history flow past, the mind realizes that time is not a strict, terrifying arrow moving endlessly forward. It is a rich, colourful tapestry, and we are just one quiet, beautiful thread woven safely into the endless, continuing design, perfectly prepared to drift further along the path, away from the vivid, painted fabrics of the festival, and into a place where the concept of bright colour was deliberately and beautifully left behind. Resting quietly at the base of the eastern mountains is Kinkaku-ji, widely known as the Silver Pavilion. Unlike its dazzling gold-covered sister across the city, this elegant two-story wooden structure is not covered in any precious metal at all. Historical records suggest it was originally intended to be coated entirely in brilliant silver foil, but the funds ran out and the shogun passed away before the lavish vision could be completed. Yet, rather than seeing a failure or an abandoned project, the people of Kyoto embraced the raw, exposed and deeply textured dark wood as an absolute masterpiece of wabi-sabi. the profound aesthetic belief that true beauty is found in imperfection, impermanence, and the natural weathering of time. The wood is deeply grooved, softened by centuries of rain, wind, and the gentle touch of the changing seasons. Beside the dark pavilion sits an enormous, perfectly sculpted cone of white sand, meticulously maintained and designed with immense mathematical precision, specifically to catch and reflect the pale, silvery light of the full moon onto the weathered wood. The mind is deeply comforted by this quiet, unfinished building. It softly whispers the truth that you do not need to be polished, gilded, or even entirely finished to be considered perfectly beautiful. There is immense dignity and peace in your natural state, just exactly as you are. From the visual reflection of pale moonlight on white sand, the journey pulls inward, shifting from what can be seen to what can only be felt in the very air itself. Tucked away in the quiet, tatami-matted rooms of the old city, the ancient art of kodo, the traditional Japanese incense ceremony, is still practiced with absolute reverence. But in this deeply quiet space, you do not simply smell the incense. The traditional verb used by masters of this ancient practice is monko, which translates beautifully and specifically to listening to the incense. A master of the ceremony will meticulously prepare a delicate cup of white ash, combing it into a perfect miniature mountain before placing a tiny, heat-resistant plate of mica on top. Finally, a nearly microscopic sliver of rare, fragrant wood is placed on the plate. It is never allowed to catch fire or produce heavy, choking smoke. It simply warms from below. To perceive the delicate, sweet, and earthy aroma of the warming wood, you must bring the ceramic bowl close to your face, close your eyes, and tune out absolutely every other distraction in the world. It requires a stillness so profound that the room feels suspended in time. It is a stunning realization that we can actively shift how we interact with the world, taking a sense we normally ignore and giving it our total, undivided attention. Listening to the unseen fragrance asks the tired mind to stop anticipating the future and simply sit quietly with the invisible, lingering sweetness of the present moment. That deep, focused indoor silence gradually gives way to a brighter, more open rhythm as we step out of the shaded, fragrant rooms and onto the wide, sunlit banks of the Kamigawa River. The surface of the water here is wide and shallow, catching the bright, shifting reflections of the sky and the clouds like a moving mirror. Stretching directly across this sparkling water are lines of massive, flat stepping stones, placed perfectly apart to allow anyone to walk right across the flowing river. But what makes these stones so uniquely cherished is that among the regular rectangular blocks, the city planners quietly carved several of them into the distinct rounded shapes of gentle turtles and elegant plover birds. They were originally installed simply to stabilize the riverbed, but someone made the deliberate, beautiful choice to inject a sense of pure, childlike joy into a heavy piece of civic engineering. Every single day, businessmen in sharp suits, children with heavy backpacks, and elderly couples all pause their commutes to carefully hop from the back of a stone turtle to the sweeping wings of a stone bird. As you visualize the cool, clean water flowing steadily around those enduring, playful shapes, notice how the tension in your own shoulders can simply flow away. The body grows a little heavier, settling effortlessly into the gentle current of this quiet journey. You do not need to be serious at all times. Playfulness and joy can safely and steadily carry you to the other side. Following the rushing water of the river upstream, the landscape thickens with ancient towering pine trees, leading into the deeply sacred wooden grounds of Sanjusangendo Temple. Yet, cutting directly through this serene ancient Zen environment is a massive, towering structure that looks entirely like it belongs to another continent. It is the Suirokaku, a sweeping Roman-style aqueduct constructed entirely of bright red bricks, rising on huge, elegant arches high above the forest floor. Walking beneath these massive, echoing archways, you can hear the faint, continuous rush of the canal water flowing quietly overhead. When it was first built in the 19th century to carry water from a distant lake into the city, it was considered a shocking modern intrusion into a space of ancient wooden tradition. But time is the great harmonizer. Over the decades, the heavy humidity of the ancient forest has completely coated the harsh red bricks in a thick velvety blanket of emerald moss and dark, graceful weathering. It no longer looks like an intrusion. It looks exactly like it grew directly out of the earth alongside the maple trees. It is a striking, deeply hopeful visual lesson. The mind relaxes deeply at the sight of this beautiful integration, realizing that new, unfamiliar, or even initially jarring experiences in our lives can eventually soften. Given enough time and patience, the things we thought disrupted our peace can actually become beautiful, foundational parts of our inner landscape. Looking up from the heavy, moss-covered brick arches, our gaze travels toward the delicate, sweeping, dark grey tiled roofs of the traditional machiya townhouses that line the quiet residential avenues of the city. If you look very closely at the curving eaves just above the wooden doorways, you might notice a tiny, fiercely scowling clay figure perched bravely on the highest tile. This is Shoki-san, the legendary demon queller. Legend says that Shoki was a mythical scholar who appeared in an emperor's dream to drive away a terrible illness. Today, these small hidden guardians are individually hand-shaped from dense local clay and fired in ancient kilns until they turn a deep protective charcoal grey. They are placed high on the roofs to catch and bounce away any bad luck or negative energy that might try to drift into the home. But the absolutely most remarkable part of this tradition is rooted in the legendary politeness of Kyoto's citizens. A homeowner will carefully position their tiny guardian so that its fierce gaze never points directly at the windows or door of their neighbour across the street. Even in the act of strict personal defence, there is a profound, ingrained consideration for the emotional well-being of others. It is deeply soothing to imagine an entire city watched over by thousands of these tiny, thoughtful clay figures, working silently in the rain and the moonlight, quietly protecting the peace of the residents while fiercely respecting the peace of everyone around them. From the modest, protective roofs of the merchants, the journey drifts smoothly toward the southwestern edge of the city, arriving at the absolute pinnacle of aristocratic elegance, the Katsura Imperial Villa. Here, extending gracefully over a dark, still, artificially created lake, is a wide bamboo veranda known simply and beautifully as the moon viewing platform. The architecture of this magnificent estate does not seek to dominate nature, it completely surrenders to it. The heavy wooden eaves are pulled low, deliberately restricting the view of the sky from inside the room, so that when the paper shoji screens are finally slid open, the focus is drawn entirely to the glowing water. The platform was geometrically designed and angled centuries ago for one specific, breathtaking purpose: to perfectly frame the reflection of the autumn harvest moon exactly as it rises over the lake. To achieve a sense of total natural harmony, the master builders ensured that no straight lines in the entire estate are mathematically perfect. The wooden pillars deliberately retain the slight organic curves of the trees they once were, softening the visual impact of the building and allowing it to breathe with the forest. As you picture that massive silver moon rising slowly above the dark water, notice how your own breathing naturally deepens to match its slow, celestial ascent. The mind settles completely. Nothing needs to be controlled or held too tightly tonight. You can just let the natural geometry of your own rest take over, trusting the quiet architecture of your body to know exactly what to do. The low, sweeping horizontal spread of the Imperial Villa stands in magnificent contrast to the towering silhouette that defines the southern skyline of the city. Rising 55 meters into the air is the 5-story pagoda of Toji Temple, the tallest wooden tower in all of Japan. Standing before it, looking up at its massive tiered roofs, one might wonder how such an enormous top-heavy wooden structure has miraculously survived the violent earthquakes that have periodically shaken the islands for over 1,000 years. The brilliant secret is hidden entirely within its dark core. The interior of the pagoda is enveloped in absolute eternal darkness, filled only with the rich, dry scent of ancient cypress wood. Suspended down the very centre of this darkness is an immense, single trunk of a tree known as the Shinbashira. Astonishingly, this massive central pillar does not touch the ground. It hangs freely from the top of the tower, acting as a colossal wooden pendulum. When the earth trembles, the distinct floors of the pagoda sway in opposite directions, but the swinging central pillar counteracts the movement, safely absorbing the violent shock and pulling the entire structure gently back to its centre. This ancient engineering marvel is a profound lesson in resilience. It teaches the weary mind that true stability is never about being incredibly rigid or fighting fiercely against the unpredictable forces of the world. True endurance comes from having a strong, deeply rooted core that remains incredibly flexible, allowing you to sway gracefully through turbulence without ever losing your balance. The gentle, protective swaying of the tall wooden tower slowly morphs into the rhythmic, metallic swaying of an open-air train carriage. Winding its way out of the city and deep into the lush, towering mountains of Arashiyama is the Sagano Scenic Railway, affectionately known by locals as the Taroko train. This charming vintage locomotive does not commute, it simply explores. The heavy iron wheels of the train click and clack rhythmically against the rails, a deeply hypnotic, repetitive sound that lulls the mind into a state of travelling rest. It travels at an incredibly deliberate, unhurried pace, moving barely faster than a bicycle as it hugs the steep, rocky cliffs above the rushing turquoise waters of the Hozugawa River. It was designed purely for the act of observation, allowing passengers to feel the cool, damp mist of the river rising up to brush against their faces, and to watch the pale cherry blossoms of spring or the fiery maple leaves of autumn drift lazily past the open windows. In a modern era completely obsessed with speed, efficiency, and arriving at the destination as quickly as humanly possible, the Taroko train offers a magnificent, rebellious comfort. It gently reminds the hurried mind that efficiency is not the highest purpose of life. Sometimes, the absolute greatest luxury we can afford ourselves is to deliberately slow down, entirely removing the heavy pressure of arrival and choosing to simply witness the beautiful, moving landscape of the present moment. The slow train drops us at the misty forested base of Mount Kurama, a deeply mystical peak covered in ancient towering cedar trees. The atmosphere here is noticeably cooler, often draped in a thin, ethereal mountain fog that swallows the sound of the modern world completely. Climbing the winding mountain path, the quiet forest suddenly reveals a completely surreal, breathtaking landscape known as Kinon-michi, the Path of Roots. Here, the bedrock beneath the incredibly thin layer of topsoil is composed of extremely hard, unforgiving magma rock. Unable to dig their roots downward into the earth for vital stability, the massive cedar trees had to find a completely different way to survive the high mountain winds. Instead of going deep, they spread their massive, thick roots entirely above the ground, weaving them over the hard rock and interlocking tightly with the roots of all the surrounding trees. Together they formed an immense, deeply textured wooden net that blankets the mountain floor for acres, holding each other up against the elements. This vast, beautiful web of exposed wood is deeply inspiring. If you ever feel that you're standing on hard, unyielding ground, unable to find your footing in a difficult situation, you can find profound comfort in the wisdom of these ancient trees. You do not always have to dig deeper. You can survive and thrive beautifully by reaching outward, interlacing your strength with the world around you, and building a wide, unbreakable foundation of connection. Descending from the wild, woven roots of the high mountain, we drift softly back into the warm, illuminated centre of the ancient court, where the greatest roots of Japanese literature were quietly planted. Over 1,000 years ago, in the dim, flickering light of a single oil lamp, A noble woman known as Murasaki Shikibu sat behind a woven bamboo screen, dressed in the traditional 12 layers of perfectly colour-coordinated silk. Carefully she ground dark ink against a stone, an ink that smelled faintly of pine soot and crushed cloves. In a world completely dominated by the loud, aggressive histories of warlords and emperors, she chose to write something entirely different. She composed the tale of Genji, widely celebrated today as the world's very first psychological novel. It was not a grand story of conquest, but an incredibly sensitive, nuanced observation of the quiet, fleeting emotions of court life. A brilliant, delicate exploration of mono no aware, the bittersweet realization that all beautiful things must eventually pass. There is an immense, quiet power in knowing that the deepest, most enduring legacy of this ancient capital did not come from a noisy battlefield, but from the quiet, sensitive observation of a woman paying deep attention to the delicate passing world. As her brush lifted from the heavy paper, the wet ink dried, preserving that singular quiet moment for an absolute eternity, just as the gentle silence of this room is actively preserving your own rest, wrapping you in a soft, unbroken stillness, waiting patiently to carry you forward into the deepest hours of the night, where the quiet ink of ancient stories softly bleeds into the physical landscape of the waking world. Even in its gardens, the city possesses a secret, hidden voice designed entirely for those who know how to listen. Tucked away in the moss-covered corners of traditional courtyards is a brilliant invisible instrument known as a suikinkutsu, or the water Kyoto cave. From the surface, you only see a simple stone water basin, with a small pool of water resting beneath a gentle bamboo ladle. But buried deep beneath the smooth, dark river stones at the base of the basin is a large, hollow ceramic jar turned entirely upside down. When a single, heavy drop of water overflows and falls through the stones, it strikes the small pool of water hidden inside the dark, buried jar. The sound echoes and reverberates within the clay walls, rising back up through the earth as a pure, metallic musical chime, exactly like the plucking of a gentle harp string. This beautiful acoustic chamber is completely invisible to the eye. It is a stunning, quiet reward for the act of paying close attention, reminding the mind that profound beauty often resonates quietly beneath the surface of very ordinary things, just waiting for the moment we lean in closely enough to hear it. The delicate internal echo of the buried water harp stands in magnificent contrast to another, much older sound that echoes through the mountain temples of the northern hills. At Shiseindo, a temple completely enveloped by a dense, sweeping forest of bamboo, you will find the original shishidoshi, the famous Japanese water hammer. A long, hollowed-out tube of thick bamboo rests on a simple wooden pivot. A tiny, steady stream of pure mountain water trickles continuously into the open upper end. For a long, quiet minute, there is only the soft, whispering sound of the water filling the wood. Then, the precise moment the weight shifts, the bamboo tips forward, spilling the water, and falls back to strike a perfectly placed riverstone with a deep, hollow wooden clack. The sound is sharp and resonant, travelling for miles through the quiet forest. Yet, the monks will tell you that the true purpose of this instrument is not the striking sound itself. The sharp sound exists solely to deepen and highlight the profound, heavy, unbroken silence that immediately follows it. As you listen to the steady, unhurried rhythm of your own breathing, notice how the mind settles beautifully into the empty spaces between each breath. You do not need to fill the quiet moments. The silence is not empty. It is a rich, heavy blanket of peace, made even sweeter by the gentle rhythms of life moving around it. That rhythmic, cyclical awareness of time extends far beyond the wooden instruments of the garden, woven deeply into the very way the city experiences the passing of the year. While the modern world operates on 4 broad seasons, the traditional artisans of Kyoto still observe the ancient calendar of 72 micro-seasons. These are beautifully specific, fleeting periods of time lasting only about 5 days each, bearing highly poetic, incredibly observant names like Plum Fuzz Becomes Yellow, Swallows Depart, or Soft Winds Bring the Rain. To honour this microscopic shifting of the earth, the master confectioners of the city create wagashi, traditional sweets that change entirely every single week. A sweet served in early June might be made of translucent pale blue agar jelly, perfectly resembling a single dew-covered hydrangea petal after a morning shower. Just 5 days later, that sweet will vanish from the shelves forever, replaced by one resembling the very first pale green firefly of the summer. This extreme, delicious dedication to the present moment teaches the weary mind an incredibly comforting lesson. You do not need to carry the weight of an entire year, or even a whole season. You only ever need to experience the exact specific 5-day window you are currently resting in, appreciating the small, temporary sweetness of the world exactly as it is right now. The incredibly precise shifting colours of those delicate sweets eventually spill outward, finding their most magnificent expression in the wide, flowing rivers that bisect the city. Kyoto is the historic birthplace of kyoyuzen, an astonishingly vibrant traditional method of dyeing the silk used for the most elaborate kimonos. Artisans paint incredibly intricate patterns of cranes, plum blossoms, and rolling waves directly onto the raw silk using rice paste and brilliant natural dyes. But the most vital, magical step of this entire process historically took place not in a warm workshop, but in the freezing, fast-moving currents of the Kamo and Horikawa rivers in the absolute dead of winter. This practice, known as yuzen nagashi, involved stretching the long, painted bolts of silk directly into the icy water. The freezing temperature was absolutely essential. It shocked the silk fibres, sealing the vibrant colours permanently into the fabric, while the pure, rushing river washed away all the excess rice paste. For centuries, the sight of long, brilliant ribbons of crimson, indigo and gold floating gracefully in the dark, icy winter rivers was a defining landscape of the city. It is a deeply powerful visual reminder that sometimes the coldest, most difficult conditions are exactly what we need to set our brightest, most vibrant colours into place, allowing our true brilliance to become permanent and unshakable. Once the brilliant silk is dried and woven, it is carried back into the narrow, densely packed merchant districts, where the architecture itself speaks a completely silent, tactile language. The traditional wooden townhouses, the machiya, are completely lined with intricate wooden lattice windows known as koshi. To a passing visitor, these rows of dark wooden slats simply look like beautiful, uniform architectural details, casting mesmerizing, striped shadows across the paving stones. But to a local of the old city, the wood is actually speaking. The exact width, spacing and rhythm of the wooden slats were historically designed to indicate exactly what was being sold inside, long before signboards were common. The Itoya koshi used by thread and silk merchants featured very fine, widely spaced slats to let in massive amounts of natural sunlight, essential for judging the exact dye colours of the fabric. The Sakaya koshi, built for sack breweries, used incredibly thick, heavy, closely packed beams meant to physically protect the glass and withstand the heavy rolling wooden casks. You could walk down a completely unlit street at midnight, simply running your hand lightly over the wooden windows and read the entire economy of the city through your fingertips. Your body grows heavier, your hands resting comfortably, as you realise you do not always need to see the path clearly to know exactly where you are. Sometimes you can just gently feel your way through the dark. Stepping off that dark wooden street and ducking low through the tiny sliding door of a traditional tea room, the vast complexity of the city instantly vanishes. In the shadowed alcove of the room, resting on a scroll of calligraphy, is a single, astonishingly simple flower arrangement known as chabana. Unlike the grand, highly structured and rigidly wired styles of formal ikebana, which seek to elevate nature into a massive artistic performance, Chabana translates simply to tea flowers. The absolute guiding philosophy of this practice is a phrase laid down by the greatest tea masters centuries ago. Let the flowers be exactly as they are in the field. A master might spend hours walking through a misty morning mountain only to carefully cut one single, slightly asymmetrical camellia, perhaps with a single leaf that has been gently chewed by an insect. They place it in a humble, unglazed bamboo vase, adding absolutely nothing else. In a world that constantly demands we arrange ourselves into perfect, symmetrical, highly productive displays for others to judge, the solitary tea flower offers a profound, washing wave of relief. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be forced into an unnatural shape. Just being exactly as you are, bearing the slight, beautiful weathering of your own unique journey, is considered the absolute highest form of elegance. That deep appreciation for natural, unforced growth spreads beautifully across the city, finding its most spectacular display in the sprawling ancient grounds of Ninna-ji Temple. Here, behind the heavy wooden gates, grows a very specific, legendary grove of cherry trees known as the Omurozakura. Traditional Japanese cherry trees are famous for towering high overhead, creating a massive, sweeping canopy of pink that forces you to gaze up into the sky. But the Omuro cherry trees are entirely different. Because the specific soil beneath this temple is composed of incredibly hard, dense bedrock and thick clay, the roots of these trees simply could not dig deep enough to support a massive trunk. As a result, the trees rarely grow taller than 2 meters. They also bloom much later in the spring than all the others in the city. When you walk through this specific grove, you're not looking up. You're walking completely immersed within a thick floating cloud of blossoms, entirely at eye level. For centuries, poets and philosophers have cherished these late-blooming, grounded trees. They whisper a very gentle, patient truth to the mind. If the soil you find yourself in prevents you from growing as fast or as tall as those around you, you are not failing. You're simply adapting, and you will still bloom magnificently, right exactly where you are, perfectly within reach. The struggle of those shallow, clay-bound roots eventually leads our thoughts deep underground, tracing the ancient, invisible lifelines of wood that connect the entire region. Across the southern hills, hidden quietly in the shadow of a deep forest, stands Ujigami Shrine. It is incredibly small, entirely unpainted, and beautifully weathered, looking like a forgotten, humble wooden shed compared to the massive, bright golden pavilions of the city centre. Yet, it holds an absolutely staggering secret. By carefully analysing the microscopic rings hidden deep within its ancient wooden pillars, modern scientists discovered that this unassuming structure was built in the year 1060, making it the oldest original Shinto shrine still standing in all of Japan. But the tree rings revealed something even more poetic. The wood used to build this quiet, tiny shrine was cut from the exact same ancient, long-vanished forest as the wood used to build the magnificent towering Byodo-in temple just across the river. They are literal, biological siblings, sharing the exact same ancient DNA. Knowing this brings a profound sense of unseen connection. It reminds us that 2 things can look entirely different on the outside, one grand and celebrated, the other quiet and modest, yet be born from the exact same strong ancient foundation. We are all deeply, fundamentally connected by the same quiet earth. From that ancient foundational wood, the mind drifts softly toward the deep, pliable clay of the eastern hills, where the city's legendary pottery, kiyomizu-dera, is born in roaring kilns. Most famous pottery towns in the world are strictly defined by their local earth. They might only produce heavy, dark, unglazed stoneware or purely delicate, translucent white porcelain. Kyoto, however, is entirely unique. Because it was the imperial capital for a millennium, it drew in hundreds of demanding, highly specific tea masters, aristocrats, and monks, all of whom wanted something entirely different. To survive, the potters of the Gojozaka district had to import clay and glazes from all over the country. Because of this, kiyomizu-yaki has no single defining visual style. A master potter might create a rough asymmetrical dark ash bowl in the morning and a flawless, intricately painted gold-leafed porcelain cup in the afternoon. The true, defining characteristic of Kyoto ceramics is its absolute brilliant lack of a fixed identity. It is defined entirely by its total adaptability to the present moment. Letting go of a single, rigid identity is profoundly freeing. The mind can just simply drift, knowing it does not have to be just one thing forever. You're allowed to be complex, fluid, and brilliantly adaptable to whatever the day requires of you. As the heat of the ceramic kilns finally cools, we carry that warmth back out into the dark, incredibly fresh air of the Arashiyama River Gorge at midnight. Drifting silently on the black glassy surface of the Oi River are long traditional wooden boats. They have no modern motors, moving only by the gentle push of a bamboo pole against the riverbed. Hanging from the very front of each boat is a heavy iron basket, filled with blazing, crackling pine logs that cast a warm, flickering orange glow over the dark water. This is the ancient art of ukai, or cormorant fishing. The fisherman, dressed in traditional dark woven skirts to protect against the sparks, works in total wordless harmony with a flock of elegant dark seabirds. There are no loud nets or heavy machines, just the rhythmic, hollow tapping of the fisherman's wooden pole against the side of the boat, a gentle acoustic language that the birds have understood for over 1,000 years. It is an utterly hypnotic, floating world. The only light comes from the ancient suspended fire. As the burning pine pops and shifts, thousands of tiny glowing orange sparks drift slowly up from the iron basket, rising higher and higher into the cold, black air until they become completely indistinguishable from the endless, quiet stars of the night sky, preparing the deeply settled mind to journey even further into the brilliant floating dark. From the shimmering starlit reflections on the surface of the Oi River, we follow the gentle, winding currents of water far up into the deeply forested northern ravines of the city. Here, embraced by towering ancient cedar trees that block out the modern world entirely, sits Kifun Shrine. It is a deeply atmospheric sanctuary dedicated specifically to the ancient deity of water and rain. When visitors seek guidance here in the cool, moss-scented mountain air, they do not receive a traditional pre-printed paper fortune. Instead, the shrine attendants hand them a completely blank, delicate slip of pristine white paper. It is only when this seemingly empty paper is carried carefully to the sacred stone fountain and laid gently upon the surface of the cold, pure mountain water that the hidden ink slowly begins to materialize. Watching the invisible words rise slowly to the surface of the paper is a beautifully quiet, magical experience. It is a profound, comforting lesson for the restless mind. It reveals that the answers we are frantically looking for are often already written. We simply cannot read them until we stop forcing the process, lay our heavy questions down, and let them rest quietly on the natural currents of the world. From that sacred whispering mountain spring, the gathered droplets naturally begin their long sweeping descent back down into the heart of the ancient city, eventually flowing smoothly past the incredibly narrow winding cobblestones of Pontosho Alley. This beautifully preserved entertainment district runs directly parallel to the wide river, completely lined with centuries-old dark wooden tea houses and hidden intimate restaurants. As the evening deepens and the blue twilight settles over the river, a mesmerizing transformation occurs. Hanging outside every single sliding wooden door is a delicate paper lantern, and one by one they begin to glow with a soft, warm crimson light. Painted carefully on the front of each glowing red lantern is the simple, stylized silhouette of a chidori, a plover bird captured mid-flight. The chidori has been the official beloved crest of this quiet district for generations. As you walk down the seemingly endless stone-paved alleyway, the repetition of these glowing, flying birds floating gracefully in the evening mist creates a profound, gentle visual rhythm. As you picture those soft red lights receding slowly into the distance, notice how your own breathing settles effortlessly into that same steady rhythm. The mind can simply drift, following the beautiful glowing path of the birds without ever needing to know exactly where the alley ends. Behind those glowing red lanterns and heavy sliding wooden doors lies an exquisite interior world, wrapped entirely in beautiful textured paper. However, this is not ordinary paper. It is kyokarakami, the incredibly sophisticated traditional Kyoto art of woodblock printed wallpaper, used almost exclusively for the sliding fusuma doors that gently divide the rooms of traditional homes and ancient temples. To create these mesmerizing, repeating patterns of ocean waves, autumn maple leaves, or curving bamboo, the master artisans do not use flat, heavy ink. Instead, they handprint the ancient wooden blocks using a paste made of crushed mica, a naturally occurring, highly reflective silicate mineral. In the dim, quiet, candlelit rooms of the ancient capital, these delicate mica patterns would catch the faint, flickering light of the flames or the pale glow of the moon, making the flat walls themselves appear to breathe, shimmer, and shift softly in the shadows. It is a breathtaking display of incredibly subtle artistry. True, enduring elegance never demands bright, harsh spotlights or loud attention. It simply waits patiently in the quiet shadows, ready to reveal its gentle, shimmering brilliance the moment the softest light finally touches it. Leaving the delicate, shimmering interiors of the tea houses behind, we travel softly outward, moving to the far western, misty hills of Sagano, where the dense bamboo forests open up to reveal a temple completely unlike any other in the city. Otagi Nenbutsu-ji is a quiet, secluded sanctuary that is home to exactly 1,200 stone statues of Buddhist disciples, known as rakan. But these are not the strict, solemn, perfect figures you might expect to find in a deeply traditional temple. These incredibly endearing statues were carved in the late 20th century by completely ordinary people. Amateurs from all walks of life who travelled from across the country to learn the gentle art of stone carving. Because they were shaped by everyday hands, the statues are profoundly, wonderfully human. Some of the stone figures are laughing uproariously, holding their bellies. Others are gently holding small cats or birds. Some are pouring a drink for their neighbour, and many simply wear a soft, sleepy, deeply peaceful smile. Decades of heavy rain and damp forest air have covered them all in a unifying thick blanket of soft green moss. They stand as a deeply comforting reminder that absolute peace and enlightenment are not rigid, joyless states of unreachable perfection. True serenity includes laughter, friendship, and the wonderful, messy, completely natural warmth of simply being human. This profound underlying respect for humble, everyday elements forms the absolute, unshakable foundation of Kyoto's ancient monastic cuisine, a practice known as shojin ryori. Traditionally prepared and eaten by Zen Buddhist monks, this incredibly beautiful multi-course meal is entirely vegetarian. But its true life-changing magic does not lie merely in the absence of meat. It lies in the incredibly strict, mindful philosophy of absolute zero waste. The master temple cook, honoured with the title of the Tenzo, is trained to treat a common, dirt-covered daikon radish with the exact same reverence and extreme care as they would a rare, expensive delicacy. The rough skins are carefully peeled and fermented into sharp, delicious pickles. The bitter green leaves are finely chopped, roasted and scattered like snow over rice. The crisp white flesh is slowly and patiently simmered for hours in a rich, savoury broth made of sea kelp. Every single tiny fragment of the vegetable is deeply honoured, utilised, and beautifully transformed. Your body grows beautifully heavier, absorbing the deep, quiet nourishment of this thought. Nothing in your own life is ever truly wasted. Every single experience, even the parts that seem small, bitter, or completely unremarkable, can be masterfully transformed into something rich and meaningful when given the right gentle attention. The quiet, daily dedication found in the humble temple kitchen perfectly mirrors an even more staggering feat of devotion burning quietly high above the city. Dominating the northeastern skyline is the misty, deeply forested summit of Mount Hiei. Here, enveloped by massive ancient cedar trees and heavy rolling mountain fog, stands Kinkaku-ji, the vast historic mother mountain of Japanese Buddhism. Deep inside the cavernous, incredibly dark main hall of the temple, wrapped in absolute heavy silence, sits a beautifully ornate bronze lantern. Inside this specific lantern burns a small, steady flame known as the Fumetsu no Hoto, the inextinguishable Dharma light. Teams of dedicated monks have been continuously tending to this exact singular flame, carefully adding pure, pressed rapeseed oil to the basin day and night without a single interruption for over 1,200 years. Through centuries of wars, terrible storms, and the deep freezing snows of the mountain winters, the flame has never once been allowed to go out. It is profoundly comforting to realize that as you sleep tonight, somewhere in the world, someone is quietly keeping the light alive. It is a continuous, unbroken chain of gentle human care that spans the rise and fall of entire empires, burning steadily through the dark. If we were to follow the brilliant, enduring light of that ancient fire far to the north, venturing well beyond the dense protective ring of the Kyoto mountains, the landscape suddenly and miraculously opens up to the vast, salty, breezy expanse of the Sea of Japan. Here lies one of the three classic, most celebrated scenic views in all of Japanese history, Amanohashi Date, poetically translated as the Bridge in Heaven. It is a stunning natural sandbar over 3 kilometers long, stretching perfectly across a calm, glassy blue bay. The narrow strip of white sand is densely planted with thousands of ancient, twisting, dark green pine trees. For centuries, visitors who journey to the mountains overlooking this bay have engaged in a playful, poetic, and highly specific viewing tradition called matanozoki. They stand on the high ridge, turn their backs to the sparkling bay, bend forward at the waist, and view the entire landscape completely upside down between their own legs. From this inverted, unusual angle, the dark sea and the bright blue sky instantly swap places, and the green, pine-covered sandbar suddenly appears to be a massive floating green bridge soaring directly up into the heavens. It is a gentle, brilliant reminder that when we feel entirely stuck in our lives, we do not always need to change the entire world around us. Sometimes we just need to softly and playfully shift our perspective, and the mundane instantly transforms into something completely magical. We let the sky gently return to its proper place and allow the coastal winds to carry us smoothly south, back into the rolling, perfectly manicured green tea fields of Uji. Spanning the incredibly wide, fast-moving turquoise waters of the Ujigawa River is the magnificent Uji Bridge. It is recognized as one of the oldest structurally referenced bridges in the entire country, steeped in centuries of poetic history and literature. While the long wooden bridge faithfully connects the two distant shores, it holds a beautifully specific, highly unusual architectural feature jutting out from its very center. It is called the Mizunoma, a small dedicated wooden viewing platform that hangs directly over the most turbulent part of the rushing current. In the late 16th century, the great unifying warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi ordered his servants to draw water from this exact rushing center point of the river every single morning. He believed with absolute certainty that the water drawn from the most active, flowing part of the river was the absolute purest, most spiritually perfect water for his legendary, quiet tea ceremonies. It teaches us that the best, most life-giving elements of our world are often found not while sitting safely on the stagnant shore, but by stepping bravely out into the middle of the flowing current, right where the movement is the strongest. The rich, complex, dark green tea prepared from that pure, rushing river water demands an equally delicate, thoughtfully crafted pairing. The absolute most iconic, universally beloved confection in all of Kyoto is a beautiful, simple sweet called yatsuhashi. If you visit the city today, you will most likely find it served as a soft, delicate, triangular pocket of steamed rice flour dough, gently filled with sweet red bean paste and heavily, generously dusted with fragrant, warming cinnamon powder. But its original baked form, created in the late 17th century, was shaped very differently. The dough was rolled out and gently curved to perfectly mimic the elegant arched shape of a traditional Japanese harp, the koto. The sweet was actually invented to honor and remember a legendary blind koto master named Yatsuhashi Kengyo, who firmly believed and taught that beautiful music should be completely accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy elite. To let this sweet slowly melt in your mouth is to literally consume a piece of ancient, loving music. It is a brilliant, comforting crossover of the human senses, reminding us that true art does not belong to just one single sense. A sound can become a physical shape, and that shape can easily become a comforting, cinnamon-scented memory. The elegant, invisible shape of those ancient harp strings beautifully echoes the massive, deeply powerful, invisible strings that pull the entire ancient city together. When Kyoto was first founded over a millennium ago as Heian-kyo, the capital of peace and tranquility, it was not built randomly or organically. It was laid out on a massive, incredibly strict geometric grid, guided entirely by the ancient, highly complex principles of Shijinsu, or Four Gods Feng Shui. The master builders and diviners searched the landscape until they found the absolute perfect geographic alignment. They ensured there was a flowing river to the east to house the blue dragon, a great wide road to the west for the white tiger, a sprawling open basin to the south for the vermilion bird, and a high, solid mountain to the north to eternally protect the back of the black turtle. The entire layout of the city is not just a triumph of urban planning, it is a colossal geographic talisman. It was deliberately and carefully woven into the physical topography of the earth specifically to generate and trap eternal, unshakable peace. As the breath moves slowly and rhythmically through your chest, it is profoundly settling to know you are drifting through a space that was literally magically engineered for complete tranquility. You are protected entirely on all four sides by the silent, ancient, enduring guardians of the landscape. We find ourselves drifting toward the very heart of this magical grid, where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual seem to blur into a soft indigo mist. In the quiet northern reaches of the city, there is a small, unassuming temple called Honanin. To enter, you must pass through a traditional thatched gate, and as you do, you are greeted by two large rectangular mounds of sand rising up from the ground. These are the byaku-sanden, or white sand mounds. Every few days, the monks use a wooden rake to draw intricate swirling patterns into the surface of the sand, patterns of flowing water, falling maple leaves, or the soft ripples of a pond. The most profound part of this ritual is its intentional impermanence. The monks know with absolute certainty that the wind will eventually soften the edges, or a sudden afternoon rain will wash the design away entirely. This practice is a quiet, rhythmic meditation on the beauty of letting go. It suggests to the tired mind that we do not need to build monuments out of our thoughts, or hold on to our worries with a tight iron grip. We can simply draw our intentions in the sand, appreciate their beauty for a fleeting moment, and then trust the natural world to gently smooth the surface back to a state of perfect, clean stillness. This sense of peaceful, intentional impermanence flows naturally from the shifting sand into the very fabric of the city's ancient aristocratic history. Deep within the imperial palace grounds, there are wide gravel paths composed of millions of tiny smooth river stones. As you walk, the gravel makes a distinct rhythmic crunch-crunch sound that echoes softly against the high earthen walls. This sound was once considered a vital part of the palace's atmosphere, acting as a natural auditory shield that made it impossible for anyone to move in secret. Yet, there is one specific courtyard where the stones take on a more poetic significance. Known as the South Court, this vast open expanse of white gravel is designed to act as a giant natural reflector. In the centuries before electricity, The brilliant white stones would catch the high midday sun and bounce a soft, diffused, ethereal light deep into the shaded wooden halls of the palace. It is a brilliant example of how even the smallest, most common objects can be transformed into a source of immense light when they are brought together in harmony. The body feels a little heavier now, sinking into the idea that you too are composed of many small, quiet strengths that, when gathered together, create a bright and enduring inner light. The soft, reflected glow of the palace stones eventually leads us back to the winding cobblestone streets of Gion, where the light takes on a much warmer, more intimate hue. Here, the traditional architecture is defined by a deep, earthy red colour known as Bengala. It is a natural pigment made from oxidized iron, and it coats the delicate wooden lattices of the tea houses in a rich protective shade that seems to absorb the evening shadows. This specific red was chosen not just for its beauty, but for its incredible resilience. It protects the wood from the damp, humid air of the river and the harsh cycles of the sun. In the dim light of dusk, these red wooden slats create a warm, protective boundary between the public street and the private, quiet world within. It is a visual representation of the concept of kekai, a spiritual and physical border that keeps the chaotic energy of the outside world at bay. As you visualize this warm red wood, you might feel a similar boundary forming around your own awareness. You're safe within the quiet lattice of your own rest. The outside world can continue its busy, hurried pace. But here, behind the protective red wood of the mind, there is only the slow, steady warmth of complete tranquility. Moving deeper into the shadows of the old city, we encounter a texture that is the absolute opposite of the hard, protective wood. The soft, incredibly fine porcelain used in the creation of Kyoto's legendary dolls, known as kyoningyo. These are not mere playthings, they are considered high art, with a history that stretches back over 1,000 years to the Heian court. The most remarkable part of their creation is the skin of the doll, which is made through a painstaking process called go-fun. Artisans take the shells of oysters, grind them into a microscopic powder, and mix them with a delicate glue made from animal hide. They apply layer after layer of this translucent white paste, sanding it down between each application until the surface of the doll glows with a soft, ethereal luster that perfectly mimics the look of human skin in the moonlight. Some of these dolls take months to complete, with every single hair made of real silk and every fold of the miniature kimono hand-dyed in the traditional way. This level of microscopic devotion reveals a profound cultural patience. It suggests that nothing is too small to be worthy of our total loving attention. As the breath settles, the mind can find rest in this slow, methodical care, realizing that your own quiet inner world is being shaped with the same gentle, patient precision. The incredible white luster of the porcelain dolls eventually finds its way back into the natural world, appearing as the pale, ghost-like bark of the Japanese stewartia trees that line the quiet ponds of the city's hidden shrines. But even deeper than the trees, hidden in the very soil of the northern mountains, is a material that helped build the aesthetic soul of Kyoto, uchigumori whetstones. For over 800 years, a single mountain called Narutaki was the only source in the world for these specific natural stones used to polish the legendary Japanese swords. Unlike modern, industrial sharpeners that create a harsh, mirror-like finish, these natural stones create a soft, hazy, cloud-like texture on the steel. The word uchigomori actually translates to inner cloud. A master polisher will sit in absolute silence for weeks, moving the blade back and forth across the stone with a rhythmic, watery sound. The goal is not just to make the blade sharp, but to reveal the soul of the steel, the intricate wavy patterns created by the folding of the metal. It is a beautiful metaphor for the process of rest. Just as the stone gently polishes the steel to reveal its hidden beauty, sleep acts as a natural softening stone for the mind. It wears away the sharp, jagged edges of the day's worries, revealing the calm, steady and beautiful patterns that exist deep within you. The rhythmic back and forth motion of the sword polisher's hands finds a larger, more ancient echo in the massive wooden gates of Kyonin Temple. This is the head temple of the Jodo sect, and it houses one of the largest and most powerful bells in the entire world. Cast in the year 1633, the bronze bell weighs a staggering 74 tons. Because of its immense weight, it cannot be rung by a single person. Every New Year's Eve, it requires a coordinated team of 17 monks to swing a massive wooden beam. One monk leads the rhythm, throwing his entire body weight backward into the air as the others pull the ropes in perfect unison. When the beam finally strikes the bronze, the sound is not a sharp ring, but a deep, low-frequency vibration that can be felt in the very bones of everyone standing for miles around. This sound, known as Joya no Kane, is intended to ring out 108 times, symbolizing the washing away of the 108 worldly desires that cause human suffering. As you listen to the imaginary, low thrum of that great bell in your mind, let each vibration act as a gentle wave, passing through your body and carrying away any lingering tension. The sound is so deep and so ancient that it feels like the heartbeat of the earth itself, anchoring you firmly to a state of profound, unshakable safety. The deep, heavy resonance of the bronze bell eventually fades into a much lighter, more delicate sound, the fluttering of thousands of paper wings. Hidden in a quiet corner of the city is a museum dedicated to the art of origami, but with a specifically Kyoto-style focus on chiyogami, paper that has been hand-printed with the same vibrant woodblock patterns used for kimonos. In the old capital, the act of folding paper was never just a hobby. It was a form of silent communication. A letter folded into the shape of a flowering plum branch carried a very different emotional weight than one folded into the shape of a formal knot. There is a specific ancient fold known as the crane of 1,000 years. It is said that anyone who folds 1,000 of these paper birds will be granted a single, heartfelt wish. The act of folding requires a high degree of digital precision and a very slow, repetitive focus on the geometry of the paper. This repetitive motion acts as a powerful, natural sedative for the nervous system. The mind stops racing and begins to follow the simple, predictable lines of the fold. It is a reminder that when the world feels too large or too complex to handle, we can always find peace by focusing on the small, tangible things directly in front of us, folding our awareness into a single, quiet point of concentration. This focus on the small and tangible eventually expands into the vast open spaces of the city's botanical heritage. While the cherry blossoms and maple leaves get the most attention, there is a much rarer, more secretive flower that defines the winter soul of Kyoto, the camellia, or tsubaki. At the temple of ryoan-ji, there are camellia trees that are over 400 years old, blooming with thousands of thick, waxy flowers in shades of deep crimson and snowy white. Unlike other flowers that lose their petals one by one, the camellia flower falls all at once, the entire heavy bloom dropping silently to the mossy ground in a single, perfect piece. In the deep silence of a winter morning, you can hear the soft, muffled thud of the flowers hitting the earth. This sudden, clean drop was historically seen as a symbol of the samurai spirit, a life lived with absolute intensity and ended with total, unhesitating grace. But for the modern sleeper, the falling camellia offers a different kind of peace. It represents the ability to let go of the day completely and all at once. You do not need to slowly unravel your thoughts. You can simply let the entire weight of the day drop away, resting as a whole, beautiful and silent bloom on the cool green moss of your own subconscious. The thick, waxy texture of the camellia leaves finds a structural parallel in the heavy, thatched roofs of the Miyama district, a hidden village in the mountains just north of the city centre. Here, the traditional farmhouses known as kayabuki are topped with incredibly thick layers of dried pampas grass, some over 1 metre deep. These roofs are not held together by nails or glue, but by the sheer weight of the grass and the expert tension of hand-woven ropes. They are incredibly efficient at regulating temperature, keeping the interior cool in the humid summer and trapping the warmth of the hearth in the freezing winter. Every 20 years, the entire community gathers together for a roof raising, helping a neighbour replace the old grass with new. This process creates a massive organic blanket that breathes with the mountain. To stand beneath one of these roofs during a heavy rainstorm is an extraordinary sensory experience. You do not hear the sharp ping of rain on metal. You hear only a soft, muted and rhythmic shoosh as the thick grass absorbs the water like a giant sponge. It is perhaps the most protective, comforting sound in the world. As you lie here, imagine your own blankets are as thick and protective as a mountain-thatched roof, absorbing all the noise and cold of the world, leaving you in a warm, silent and perfectly dry sanctuary. This deep mountain protection eventually brings us back to the most mysterious and misunderstood figure of Kyoto's history, the onmyoji, or the traditional court diviners and astronomers of the Heian period. Their job was to read the movement of the stars and the hidden currents of the earth to ensure the emperor's safety. The most famous of these was Abe no Saimai, whose shrine in the centre of the city is still marked by a simple 5-pointed star, the pentagram. While popular culture depicts them as sorcerers, the real onmyoji were master observers of the natural world. They understood that the universe moves in great predictable cycles, the rising of the tides, the shifting of the constellations and the rhythmic flow of the seasons. They taught that human health and peace of mind are found simply by aligning our own personal rhythms with these larger celestial movements. By recognizing that you are a part of a much larger, incredibly orderly system, the pressure to figure everything out on your own completely dissolves. You do not need to steer the stars, you only need to rest within their light. As the final traces of the day fade away, you can feel yourself slipping into that great ancient alignment, moving in perfect silent harmony with the rotating earth, the drifting moon, and the endless peaceful expanse of the Kyoto night. As the late summer air cools, those imaginary celestial stars seem to descend directly onto the dark, heavily forested slopes of the 5 massive mountains that completely surround the city basin. On one specific breathless night in August, colossal bonfires are ignited simultaneously near the high peaks. These are not chaotic, untamed fires. They are meticulously arranged into the shapes of massive kanji characters and ancient symbols, some stretching over 160 meters across the steep wooded inclines. This profound, sweeping event is known as Gozan no Okuribi. It is not a loud festival of celebration, but a deeply moving, silent farewell. The giant glowing characters act as warm, unmistakable beacons, guiding the visiting spirits of ancestors safely back to the other world after the holiday. The entire city extinguishes its modern, electric lights, allowing millions of people to stand on their balconies and riverbanks in absolute heavy silence, watching the ancient fire burn against the black sky. It is a stunning visual reminder of an enduring bond that entirely transcends time. The mind finds a deep, settling comfort in knowing that we are never truly severed from the past. Even in the darkest nights, there is always a guiding light, carefully tended by the living, to help us softly find our way home. The brilliant roaring orange of the mountain fires eventually softens, dissolving into the cool, dark waters resting quietly at the entrances of the city's countless ancient shrines. Before approaching the main hall, visitors are invited to cleanse their hands and mouths at a stone water pavilion called a shozuya. In recent years, a breathtakingly gentle tradition has blossomed within these carved stone basins. When the vibrant hydrangeas, lotuses or chrysanthemums in the temple gardens begin to wilt and fall, the monks do not simply throw them away. Instead, they gather the loose, heavy blooms and float them meticulously on the surface of the pure, cold purification water. This practice, known as hanachozu, transforms a simple stone sink into a magnificent floating tapestry of living colour. As the water gently ripples, the dense carpet of pink, purple and yellow petals softly rotates and shifts, completely obscuring the dark stone below. Looking down into this beautiful floating world, the muscles in your jaw can relax, and your breath can deepen. It is a brilliant, entirely peaceful lesson in finding second lives for things we assume are finished. Nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. Sometimes it just needs to be placed gently onto a new, flowing surface to be completely reborn. That gentle, shifting surface of the stone basin flows outward, finding its way into the narrow, crystal-clear stream of the Shirakawa River, winding silently through the historic district of Gion. Arching gracefully over the stone banks of this shallow waterway are massive, ancient weeping willow trees. Their incredibly long, slender green branches cascade down from the heavy canopy, like curtains of living silk, reaching just low enough to brush the moving surface of the cold water. The willow holds a deeply specific, revered place in Kyoto's aesthetic heart. Unlike the rigid, unbending pine tree or the brittle, snapping branches of the oak, the willow survives the intense, suffocating winds of a summer typhoon completely unharmed. It survives precisely because it does not fight. When the fierce winds blow, the flexible, sweeping branches simply surrender to the movement, bending horizontally with the gale, only to return to a state of absolute perfect stillness the exact moment the storm passes. As you lie here, your own body growing wonderfully heavy against the mattress, you can adopt the profound protective wisdom of the willow. You do not need to brace yourself tightly against the heavy currents of your life. You can simply remain soft, yielding completely to the gentle rhythms of the night, knowing you will naturally return to your center when the morning comes. The soft, sweeping breeze that moves through those willow branches has been masterfully captured, folded, and held in the palm of a hand by the artisans of the city for well over 1,000 years. Kyoto is the undisputed birthplace of the folding paper fan, known as the kyosensu. At first glance, it is merely a beautiful, functional object made of bamboo and painted paper. But the creation of a single, authentic Kyoto fan is an astonishing marathon of microscopic focus. It requires exactly 87 distinct, highly specialized steps to complete. One artisan spends their entire life learning only how to split the bamboo to a millimeter's thickness. Another focuses solely on folding the paper so the creases perfectly align, while a third paints the delicate gold leaf onto the folds. Because the paper must be perfectly dampened to slide onto the wooden ribs, the workshops smell wonderfully of wet bamboo and earthy ink. When a true kyosensu is snapped open, it does not merely push the air, it creates a profoundly satisfying, resonant, woody thwack, followed by a perfectly smooth, cooling whisper of wind. The mind deeply appreciates this level of unseen collaborative dedication. It reminds us that the most graceful, effortless movements in our lives are often quietly supported by a vast, unseen architecture of patience and care. The satisfying, rhythmic opening of the paper fan folds beautifully into the rhythmic, circular turning of massive wooden architecture hidden within the walls of the city's grandest temples. Inside the heavy, shaded halls of temples like Kion Inn, there exists an enormous octagonal wooden structure called a rinso, or a revolving sutra library. Standing over a story tall and intricately carved with protective deities, this massive wooden cabinet contains the entire staggering collection of Buddhist scriptures, thousands of heavy, delicate scrolls holding the deepest wisdom of the ancient world. But the brilliant, compassionate genius of the rinso lies in its incredibly precise, balanced engineering. The entire multi-ton structure rests on a single, perfectly balanced central pivot. It is designed so that even a single person, pushing gently against one of its 8 wooden arms, can cause the massive library to slowly and smoothly rotate. Ancient tradition dictates that turning this heavy wheel, just one single, complete revolution, grants the exact same spiritual merit as physically reading every single scroll housed inside. It is a stunningly empathetic invention, created specifically for the illiterate or the deeply weary who could not read the text themselves. You can let out a long, slow breath, realizing that sometimes the world is deeply forgiving. You do not always have to do the exhausting, impossible work to receive the absolute benefit of peace. From that turning shadowed wheel of wisdom, we step back out into the bright open air, approaching the colossal 2-story wooden gate of Sanjusangendo Temple. Known as the Sanmon, or the Gate of the Three Liberations, this colossal, heavy timber structure does not merely mark an entrance. It is an active, physical instrument designed to drastically alter human perception. You can climb the incredibly steep wooden stairs to the upper balcony, where the air smells of old pine and mountain mist. From this high vantage point, the incredibly thick black wooden pillars and the heavy overhanging roof tiles perfectly, intentionally frame the sweeping view of the city and the distant western mountains. This architectural framing is not accidental. By cutting off the chaotic periphery and forcing the eye to look only through the precise, geometric opening of the ancient wood, the massive, overwhelming world is suddenly reduced to a single, manageable, completely breathtaking painting. It was here that a legendary kabuki thief famously leaned against the balcony and declared, "Zeke Kana." What a magnificent view. The mind finds profound relief in this intentional framing. When the vastness of the world feels too large or too unmanageable, you only need to narrow your focus, putting a quiet, steady frame around the present moment and ignoring everything that falls completely outside of it. This brilliant concept of framing our view of the world is distilled into its absolute purest, most philosophical form in a quiet, secluded temple in the northern mountains called Genkoan. As you kneel quietly on the soft, tightly woven tatami mats of the main hall, you're presented with 2 large, distinct windows cut directly into the plaster wall, looking out over the exact same serene, maple-filled garden. On the right is a perfectly square window, known as the Window of Confusion. Its 4 sharp, rigid, unyielding corners represent the heavy, structured constraints of human life: illness, endless labour, strict rules, and the inescapable cycle of hardship. But right beside it, bathed in the same gentle sunlight, is a perfectly circular window, known as the Window of Enlightenment. The circle, or enso, has no sharp edges, no beginning, and no end. It represents the infinite, the vastness of the universe, and the absolute freedom of a mind that has let go of its rigid attachments. The breathtaking genius of this room is that the beautiful rustling garden outside does not change. The only thing that changes is the shape through which you choose to observe it. As your thoughts drift and your body softens completely into the mattress, you can choose to look through the circle. You can let go of the sharp corners of the day, allowing your awareness to become smooth, infinite, and entirely at peace with the quiet view. The smooth, unbroken line of the circular window slowly unravels, turning into hundreds of long, brightly coloured, incredibly fine threads of pure silk. In the quiet, sunlit studios of the city, master artisans practice the mesmerising, hypnotic art of kyokumihimo, traditional Kyoto silk braiding. The artisan sits on the floor before a polished wooden stand called a marudai, which looks like a small wooden stool with a hole in the centre. Weighted bobbins of coloured silk hang over the edge. With a deeply rhythmic, lightning-fast motion, the artisan moves the bobbins diagonally across the smooth wooden surface, lifting and crossing the heavy spools with a soft, hollow clack, clack, clack. The threads slowly twist together, descending down through the centre hole to form an incredibly strong, beautifully patterned 3-dimensional cord. These brilliant cords were once used to bind the heavy lacquered armour of ancient samurai, ensuring the protective plates never slipped in battle. Today they gracefully bind the heavy silk obis of kimonos. The act of watching, or even just imagining this braiding, is a profound anchor for a wandering mind. It takes the dozens of loose, scattered, chaotic threads of your thoughts and gently, rhythmically weaves them together into a single, strong, deeply unified cord of awareness, safely binding you to the present moment. The bright diagonal crossing of the silk threads eventually weaves its way into one of the most delightful, surprisingly complex and mathematically fascinating treats found in the old capital. In a small, incredibly warm workshop that smells intensely of toasted sugar, massive heated copper drums rotate endlessly on a tilted axis. Inside these spinning drums are millions of tiny, colourful, star-shaped sugar candies called konpito. While the candy was originally introduced by Portuguese traders centuries ago, the artisans of Kyoto elevated its creation into a test of absolute staggering patience. You cannot use a mould to create the tiny, recognisable spikes that cover the candy. It begins with a single, microscopic grain of coarse sugar. For 14 to 20 days, the artisans must listen to the exact sound of the sugar tumbling in the hot copper pan, slowly and meticulously spraying liquid syrup over the spinning grains. The constant, endless rotation forces the crystallizing sugar to naturally build up into those tiny, perfect spikes. The sound of millions of these tiny stars rolling over one another in the drum is exactly like the rushing of a gentle, endless ocean wave. It is a deeply soothing realization that profound, beautiful transformation cannot be rushed or forced. It requires only a gentle, warm environment and the steady, continuous tumbling rotation of time. The gentle tumbling motion of the tiny sugar stars eventually comes to a complete, beautiful rest, landing softly on the lush, damp, mossy ground of a traditional ryoan-ji, the deeply specific, highly curated garden path that leads to a Kyoto tea house. Embedded in this vibrant green moss is a winding line of dark, smooth, asymmetrical rocks known as tobi-ishi, or stepping stones. To the untrained eye, these stones appear to have been dropped naturally, completely at random. But in reality, a master tea garden architect spends agonizing days placing each individual stone. They are deliberately spaced at slightly uneven intervals. Some are spaced close together to encourage a quick, light step, while others are placed further apart or raised slightly higher, forcing the guest to physically slow down, pause, and look carefully down at their own feet to avoid falling. This is a brilliant, entirely physical form of psychological grounding. By forcing you to pay absolute, undivided attention to the exact placement of your next step, the stones completely sever your mind from the anxieties of the outside world. You cannot worry about the future when you must focus entirely on the solid stone beneath your foot. As you follow this quiet, rocky path in your mind, the heavy burdens of the day are left securely at the garden gate. Your breathing perfectly matches the slow, deliberate pace of the stones, carrying you deeper and deeper into the quiet, fragrant sanctuary that waits patiently at the very end of the path. That quiet, moss-lined path inevitably leads to a small, impossibly humble wooden structure, often entirely hidden within the deeper shadows of the larger garden. To enter a traditional Kyoto tea room, you cannot simply walk upright through a grand, sweeping doorway. Instead, you must physically kneel on the damp earth and slide yourself carefully through a tiny square wooden opening known as a nijiri-guchi, or the crawling-in entrance. This incredibly small door, measuring barely over 2 feet high, was a brilliant, radical invention of the greatest tea masters of the 16th century. It was designed with one specific, profound psychological purpose: to force absolutely everyone, from the wealthiest warlord to the humblest merchant, to bow their heads and physically lower themselves before entering the space. In the ancient days, a samurai was physically forced to leave his long, heavy swords on a rack outside simply because the weapons would not fit through the tiny opening. Stepping through the nijiri-guchi is a physical act of leaving your ego, your worldly titles, and all your heavy armour completely behind in the garden. It is a stunning, deeply comforting architectural reminder that true peace can only be accessed when we are willing to make ourselves soft, to bow our heads gently, and to enter the present moment with complete, unburdened humility. Once safely inside this incredibly intimate shadowed space, the true heart of Kyoto's aesthetic philosophy is quietly placed directly into your hands. Imagine resting your fingers against the cool, slightly uneven surface of a ceramic tea bowl that has been shattered and masterfully put back together with thick glowing veins of pure gold. This is the ancient art of kintsugi, or golden joinery. The legend begins in Kyoto centuries ago, when a powerful shogun accidentally broke his absolute favourite, irreplaceable tea bowl. When it was sent away for repairs, it was returned held together by ugly, heavy metal staples. Displeased, local craftsmen sought a much more elegant solution, eventually mixing pure gold dust with sticky natural tree sap lacquer to seamlessly bind the broken ceramic shards back together. Rather than trying to hide the damage or pretend the bowl was brand new, the artisans deliberately highlighted the cracks, turning the fractures into rivers of precious metal. The bowl became infinitely more valuable and profoundly more beautiful, specifically because it had been broken. The body feels noticeably heavier now, sinking comfortably into the mattress, resting in the deep safety of its own history. You do not need to hide your own scars or smooth over the difficult parts of your journey. Your fractures are exactly what make you whole, beautifully complex, entirely unique, and completely irreplaceable. Looking up from the golden rivers of the tea bowl, your gaze is drawn outward, past the deep overhang of the wooden eaves and into the sprawling, meticulously raked gravel of a temple garden like Tenryuji. But the absolute greatest achievement of these gardens is not contained within their physical walls. It is a brilliant optical masterpiece known as shake, which translates poetically to borrowed scenery. The master garden architects of Kyoto realized that they did not need to be limited by the small physical boundaries of their own property. By carefully pruning the tops of their maple trees and precisely angling the outer stone walls, they deliberately framed the massive distant peaks of the Arashiyama Mountains, seamlessly pulling the colossal landscape directly into the background of the small intimate garden. The illusion is so perfect, so incredibly smooth, that it becomes entirely impossible to tell exactly where the manicured garden ends and the wild, untamed mountain begins. It is a staggering feat of perspective that dramatically expands the feeling of the space. It teaches the weary mind an incredibly liberating lesson about our own internal boundaries. We do not have to generate all the beauty and peace in our lives entirely from within our own small enclosures. We can simply lower our walls, adjust our perspective, and quietly borrow the vast, enduring strength of the world around us. That sweeping, borrowed view of the distant mountains is almost always beautifully framed by the dark, heavy, elegantly curving roofs of the ancient wooden halls. Unlike the hard, fired clay tiles seen in the merchant districts, the absolute most sacred temples and imperial buildings in the city are crowned with roofs made entirely of tree bark. This highly specialized, incredibly labor-intensive technique is called hiwadabuki. Master craftsmen harvest the dark, reddish-brown bark from massive hinoki cypress trees deep in the surrounding forests. But the true, breathtaking magic of this ancient process is its profound gentleness. The artisans use specialized, beautifully smooth bamboo spatulas to carefully peel only the outermost layers of the bark, leaving the inner, living tissue of the tree completely unharmed. The tree continues to live, slowly regrowing its protective skin over the next decade so it can be gently harvested again and again. These countless paper-thin strips of bark are then layered tightly upon the roof, sometimes over a foot thick, creating a massive spongy canopy that perfectly absorbs the heavy sounds of the summer rain. The mind is deeply soothed by this quiet, sustainable rhythm. It is a beautiful testament to the fact that we can draw immense protection and shelter from the natural world without ever causing it harm, living in a slow, respectful, and endlessly renewing balance. The deeply textured reddish-brown bark of those heavy protective roofs eventually fades, melting softly into the brilliant cascading colours of late spring. In the wide open courtyards of places like Kyoto Inn, towering wooden trellises are constructed over the calm, glassy surfaces of the ponds, specifically to support the massive twisting vines of the Japanese wisteria, or Fuji. While cherry blossoms represent the fleeting, upward-reaching fragility of early spring, the wisteria represents a deep, heavy, downward-flowing abundance. The incredibly long, fragrant clusters of pale purple and soft white flowers dangle heavily from the wooden lattices, sometimes growing over 3 feet long, swaying gently in the cool breeze like massive living chandeliers. Because the flower clusters are so dense and heavy, they naturally weep downward, brushing the very tops of the stone pathways and trailing their sweet, powdery perfume across the water. As you visualize these vast sweeping curtains of soft purple flowers, you can just breathe in the sweetness of the dark, letting your own heavy thoughts cascade gently down. You do not need to hold everything up or constantly reach for the sky. There is an immense, breathtaking elegance in simply letting go, allowing your energy to flow softly downward, perfectly content to rest near the quiet earth. Following the deep underground currents of the city's water far to the north, well beyond the dense ring of the mountains, the landscape completely transforms as it meets the vast, dark blue expanse of the Sea of Japan. Here, hugging the edge of a deep, incredibly calm emerald green bay, is the historic fishing village of Ini. For centuries, the people of this quiet town have lived in completely unique, 2-story wooden structures known as funaya, or floating boathouses. The entire town is built directly over the ocean. The first floor of every home is entirely open to the sea, acting as a watery garage where the fishermen can simply guide their small wooden boats directly into the shadows of their living rooms. The second floor, perched right above the water, holds the quiet, tatami-matted living spaces. To sleep in one of these ancient houses is to be rocked by the very pulse of the earth. In the deep silence of the night, you can hear the incredibly soft, rhythmic lapping of the dark tide gently striking the wooden pilings just inches beneath your floorboards. It is an absolutely hypnotic, steady heartbeat of water and wood. The entire house breathes with the ocean, reminding the deeply resting mind that it is perfectly safe to build your foundation on things that move and shift, trusting the gentle, predictable rhythms of the tide. The cool, salty mist of the northern bay gradually warms, transitioning beautifully into the thick, rolling, fragrant steam of the city's historic sento, the traditional public bathhouses. Winter in the Kyoto basin is notoriously sharp and bitterly cold, with a damp chill that seems to sink directly into the bones. But on the exact night of the winter solstice, the absolute longest and darkest night of the entire year, the public baths offer a bright, brilliant, and incredibly warm solace known as yuzu-yu. Hundreds of whole, brightly coloured fresh yuzu, a highly aromatic, deeply wrinkled Japanese citrus fruit, are set afloat in the scalding, steaming pools of mineral water. As the hot water gently warms the thick rinds, the fruits release massive amounts of natural essential oils into the heavy, humid air. The entire bathhouse fills with a sharp, incredibly sweet, and deeply comforting citrus perfume that completely erases the memory of the freezing wind outside. Sinking slowly into that deep, hot water, watching the bright yellow fruits bob cheerfully through the thick white steam, the muscles completely surrender. The cold completely leaves the body. It is a stunning sensory reminder that even in the absolute darkest, coldest moments of the year, there are always warm, bright, and deeply fragrant comforts waiting to completely envelop you, melting the winter away. The comforting, earthy warmth of the bathhouse water eventually sinks deep into the rich, dark soil of the surrounding river valleys, bringing forth a harvest that is treated with profound, almost religious reverence. Kyoto is home to a highly protected, deeply historic class of heirloom vegetables known collectively as kyoyasai. Because the ancient capital was completely landlocked and far from the sea, the local farmers spent over 1,000 years meticulously cultivating and crossbreeding their vegetables to be as robust, flavourful, and nutritionally dense as possible. These are not the uniform, perfectly symmetrical, identical vegetables found in a modern supermarket. They are wonderfully odd, deeply characterful, and heavily textured. There is the kamo eggplant shaped perfectly like a massive dark purple globe, the shogoin turnip which grows to the size of a heavy melon, and the incredibly long, fiercely twisting red kintoki carrots. They are deeply tied to the specific mineral-rich soil of the Kamo River basin, refusing to grow beautifully anywhere else in the world. As you sink deeper and deeper into your own rest, notice how perfectly supported you are by your own environment. True, deep nourishment does not come from trying to be identical to everyone else. It comes from drawing deeply from the specific earth you're planted in, allowing yourself to grow at your own pace, into your own completely unique, wonderful shape. Those heavy, brilliantly shaped vegetables are carefully harvested by hand in the quiet mist of dawn and carried down into the absolute centre of the bustling city, arriving at Nishiki Market. Known affectionately as Kyoto's kitchen, this incredibly narrow stone-paved shopping street stretches for 5 long blocks beneath a colourful glass roof. But the true hidden genius of this ancient market is not found on the busy shelves. It is completely invisible, rushing silently beneath the thick paving stones. The entire market was deliberately built over a massive subterranean vein of pure flowing groundwater. Because this deep underground river maintains a constant, completely stable temperature of around 15 degrees Celsius all year round, it acts as a massive natural climate control system. In the suffocating, humid heat of the deep summer, the cold water chills the stones from below, creating a wonderfully cool, refreshing microclimate for the delicate vegetables and fresh tofu above. It is a profound, comforting example of unseen support. The most vital, sustaining forces in our lives are often the ones we can never actually see. They flow quietly beneath the surface of our busy days, silently regulating our temperature, keeping us safe, and providing a deep, constant foundation of absolute stability, regardless of the weather above. As the deep subterranean water flows onward, and the market stalls finally pull their heavy wooden shutters closed for the night, a completely different kind of warmth takes over the city streets. Hanging outside the doorways of nearly every traditional restaurant and inn are the iconic, softly glowing paper lanterns known as Kyoto-chin. To the casual observer, these beautiful cylindrical lights appear to be held open by dozens of separate individual bamboo rings stacked on top of one another. But the traditional Kyoto lantern makers harbour a brilliant, incredibly elegant secret. The internal structure is not made of separate rings at all. It is constructed from one single, incredibly long, meticulously split strip of green bamboo, wound round and round in one continuous, perfect spiral from the very top of the lantern to the absolute bottom. This means that if the lantern is ever dropped or compressed, it does not shatter. The single bamboo spring simply absorbs the shock, collapsing flat and then bouncing instantly back to its perfect, fully open shape. The mind drifts beautifully on this single, continuous thread. You're not a collection of fragmented, separate days. Your life is one long, beautifully connected spiral, perfectly capable of compressing under pressure, only to expand softly and brightly once again, holding the gentle, warm light of the night safely inside. The continuous, perfect spiral of that glowing bamboo lantern beautifully echoes another ingenious folding structure born in the ancient capital. If you step out into the quiet, mist-draped streets on a rainy evening, you might see the soft, translucent glow of a kyowagasa, the traditional Kyoto oil paper umbrella. Unlike modern umbrellas made of cold metal and tight nylon, the wagasa is a masterpiece of organic geometry. When you open it, you're looking up into a mesmerizing, perfectly spaced web of dozens of delicate bamboo ribs, radiating outward like the petals of a massive geometric flower. The heavy washi paper is soaked in natural perilla oil, making it completely waterproof while allowing the warm, ambient light of the street lamps to filter beautifully through the colours. But the absolute greatest comfort of this umbrella is its specific acoustic embrace. When the heavy drops of the evening rain strike the oiled paper, they do not make a sharp, metallic ping. They create a deep, resonant, beautifully muted drumming sound. Walking beneath a wagasa creates a completely private, portable sanctuary of sound and soft light, reminding the mind that we can always carry our own quiet, protective atmosphere with us, no matter what kind of weather the outside world brings. The steady, resonant drops of rain roll gently off the oiled edges of the umbrella, falling onto the dark, glistening cobblestones and running smoothly toward the base of the ancient wooden townhouses. Here, protecting the lowest, most vulnerable part of the walls, is a brilliant sweeping architectural curve known as an inyarai. Instead of building a thick, rigid barricade against the splashing mud and rain, the craftsmen of Kyoto wove thousands of thin, flexible strips of bamboo into a low fence that bows gracefully outward from the wall, anchoring softly into the earth. It looks exactly like the curved belly of a heavy woven basket. When the heavy rains fall or the carriages pass, the splashing water hits the sweeping bamboo and is instantly, quietly deflected back down to the street. The delicate wooden walls of the home remain completely dry and untouched. It is a stunning physical manifestation of gentle deflection. The body feels noticeably heavier now, sinking comfortably into the mattress, understanding the profound wisdom of this design. We do not always need to build thick, hard, heavy walls to protect our own boundaries. Sometimes, the most enduring protection comes from being flexible, curving gently outward, and softly deflecting the heavy splashing noise of the world back down to the ground. As you walk alongside those curving bamboo fences, the quiet drumming of the rain is suddenly joined by a highly distinct, deeply rhythmic, hollow clacking sound. This is the unforgettable musical footstep of the okobo, the traditional towering wooden clogs worn exclusively by the maiko, the apprentice geisha of the city. Carved entirely from a single solid block of pale paulownia wood, these remarkable shoes elevate the wearer nearly 10 centimeters above the damp streets, protecting the hem of their priceless trailing silk kimonos. But their most beautiful secret is hidden entirely inside. The thick wooden sole is hollowed out, and a tiny, delicate metal bell is sometimes suspended completely out of sight within the empty cavity. With every single step, the hollow wood amplifies the sound, creating a gentle, echoing ring that announces their arrival long before they turn the corner. Because of their sheer height and unique sloping shape, it is physically impossible to run or rush while wearing them. They enforce an incredibly slow, deliberate flowing cadence. As you listen to the imaginary rhythmic clack-ring echoing down the damp stone alley, your own breathing naturally slows to match that unhurried pace. The mind realizes that true grace is never found in rushing frantically toward the destination. It is found in the slow, deliberate, beautiful rhythm of the journey itself. Those slow, echoing footsteps eventually guide us far away from the paved stones of the merchant districts, leading us softly into the deep, damp, incredibly soft earth of the northern river delta. Here, wrapping its vast, heavy green arms around the ancient Shimogamo shrine, is the Tadasu no Mori, the primeval forest of truth. While the entire city of Kyoto has grown, burned, modernized, and rebuilt itself around this space for over a millennium, this specific 12-hectare patch of woodland has remained completely and utterly untouched. It has never been logged, burned, or cleared. Some of the colossal twisting elm and zelkova trees standing here today are over 600 years old, their massive roots plunging deep into the dark, silent water table below. Stepping beneath this incredibly dense, unbroken canopy, the temperature drops instantly, and the air smells profoundly of ancient decomposing leaves and rich, wet moss. It is a staggering sensation to walk through a vibrant modern city and suddenly cross an invisible threshold into an era that existed long before the city was ever born. The tired mind finds immense, washing relief in the sheer presence of this primeval endurance. It is incredibly comforting to know that there are parts of the world and deep, untouched parts within yourself that simply exist, perfectly whole and unharmed, completely untouched by the frantic pressure to change or produce. The pure, ancient, mineral-rich water that flows silently through the deep roots of that untouched forest is the exact same water drawn by the master artisans of the city to create one of its most delicate, celebrated culinary traditions, kyoyuba. In quiet, steaming kitchens that smell softly of toasted soybeans, massive, shallow, rectangular vats of rich, white soy milk are heated at an incredibly low, painstakingly slow temperature. The artisan does not stir the liquid. They do not force the process. They simply wait in the warm, humid air, watching with absolute, undivided tension. Eventually, as the gentle heat breathes over the surface, the absolute thinnest, most delicate, protein-rich skin naturally forms on the very top of the liquid. At the exact, perfect moment, the artisan slides a smooth bamboo stick beneath this microscopic layer and lifts it gracefully into the air, capturing a perfectly translucent, softly wrinkled sheet of pure flavour. This incredibly gentle harvest is a beautiful metaphor for a mind at rest. You do not need to dive forcefully into the heavy, churning depths of your thoughts to find something valuable. If you simply apply a gentle warmth, sit completely still, and wait with patience, the richest, most delicate, and most beautiful layers will naturally rise to the surface completely on their own. The smooth, undisturbed surface of the warming milk beautifully mirrors the vast, dark, glassy expanse of Osawa no Ike, a magnificent lake resting silently in the western district of Sagano. Over 1200 years ago, a poetry-loving emperor commanded that this massive, shallow basin be dug entirely by hand. It was not built for irrigation, and it was not built for defense. It was designed, planned, and executed specifically for the exquisite, slow, and profoundly quiet art of viewing the autumn moon. But the ancient aristocrats did not stand on the shore and crane their necks upward to look at the sky. They boarded beautiful, low-riding wooden boats shaped like dragons and water birds, drifting silently out into the very centre of the black water. There, they looked softly downward, watching the brilliant silver reflection of the moon trembling gently on the dark, rippling surface of the lake. It is a stunning, deeply poetic shift in perspective. As you drift further into your own quiet rest, you can embrace this gentle wisdom. You do not always need to look up and strain yourself to see the brilliance of the universe. Sometimes, the most profound, comforting light is found simply by looking downward into the deep, quiet reflection of your own still and peaceful waters. Floating on that ancient, unhurried water feels exactly like the slow, rolling, majestic pace of the Aoi Matsuri, one of the city's 3 great defining festivals. Held when the bright, harsh light of spring begins to soften into the warm, humid embrace of early summer, the absolute centerpiece of this magnificent procession is the gisha, the massive, incredibly ornate traditional wooden ox carts. These towering heavy vehicles have no modern engines and no rubber tyres. They are pulled exclusively by massive, slow-moving black oxen, their giant wooden wheels turning with a deep, rhythmic, groaning creak that echoes against the paved avenues. From the very top of the curved roofs down to the heavy wooden spokes, the carts are entirely draped in fresh, vibrant green aoi, wild hollyhock leaves gathered from the riverbanks. Because the massive wooden wheels possess no modern suspension, the ox carts must move at an agonizingly slow, incredibly deliberate crawl to keep the riders inside from being violently jolted. This profound, forced slowness is not seen as a burden. It is celebrated as the absolute highest form of aristocratic dignity. Your body is completely supported right now, heavy and warm against the bed. You do not need to move fast to be moving forward. There is an immense, breathtaking power in choosing a slow, deliberate, unhurried pace, letting the heavy wooden wheels of your life roll smoothly and gracefully exactly as they are. To ensure those massive heavy wooden wheels could withstand centuries of humidity, rain, and the grinding stone streets, The ancient carpenters treated the timber with a remarkable natural substance called kakishibu. This is a highly astringent, intensely concentrated juice pressed from unripe, fermented persimmons. When this liquid is first extracted and applied to the pale wood or paper umbrellas, it is incredibly sharp, pungent, and harsh to the senses. It possesses an intensely bitter, challenging energy. But as the wood is left to dry, slowly absorbing the gentle rolling sunlight over many long years, a spectacular chemical transformation occurs entirely on its own. The harsh, bitter liquid completely oxidizes, transforming the wood into a stunning, deep, glowing, waterproof shade of mahogany red. The material grows exponentially stronger, more resilient, and infinitely more beautiful, simply by resting in the light. It is a deeply hopeful, comforting truth for the resting mind. The sharp, bitter, or difficult experiences we sometimes absorb do not remain harsh forever. Given enough time, patience, and the gentle light of our own awareness, those difficult layers eventually cure, soften, and transform into the very deep, resilient lacquer that protects and beautifies our lives. The protective, enduring warmth of that dark red wood carries us smoothly into the deepest, coldest, most biting part of the Kyoto winter, arriving at the sprawling, snowy grounds of Kitano Tenmangu Shrine. Long before the delicate, universally celebrated cherry blossoms awaken in the warm, easy breeze of spring, the rugged, ancient yume, the Japanese plum trees begin to bloom. They are astonishingly brave. They push their incredibly vibrant, tightly clustered pink and snowy white petals out directly into the freezing snow and the harsh, howling winter winds. Because the air around them is so incredibly cold, sharp, and crisp, their thick, sweet, incredibly rich fragrance, which smells warmly of honey and spicy cinnamon, cuts through the frozen air, carrying for miles across the city. They do not wait for the perfect, comfortable conditions to reveal their beauty. They offer their warmth precisely when the world is at its absolute coldest. As you lie here, safe and warm beneath your covers, you can draw immense strength from the quiet bravery of the plum blossom. It whispers the beautiful truth that grace and brilliance do not require a perfect, frictionless environment. You possess a deep, enduring, internal warmth that no winter and no difficult season can ever freeze. The beautiful, sweeping, asymmetrical branches of those blooming plum trees are perfectly mirrored inside the city's most elegant, secluded, and highly protected rooms in an architectural masterpiece known as chigaidana, or staggered shelving. Built into the deeply shadowed, decorative alcoves of traditional shoin drawing rooms at estates like the Katsura Imperial Villa, these wooden shelves are never ever built in a straight, predictable, perfectly symmetrical line. Instead, the master carpenters purposefully staggered the thick wooden planks at different, highly specific heights, connecting them with delicate, curving pieces of bamboo. The brilliant intention behind this uneven design was to perfectly mimic the soft, floating, entirely unpredictable layers of low-hanging mountain mist drifting through the valleys. The human eye, exhausted by the rigid geometric grids of modern life, finds immense, washing relief in this deliberate, planned asymmetry. It is a visual lullaby for the perfectionist mind. As the deep rest of the night begins to fully claim you, you can completely let go of the heavy burden of absolute symmetry. You do not need to be perfectly balanced, rigidly structured, or linearly organized to be considered a true masterpiece. You can simply exist in beautiful, staggered, floating layers, drifting effortlessly into the soft, unmeasured, deeply welcoming mist of the night, ready to discover exactly what waits in the quiet, unfolding dark. In the deepest, most completely silent months of the Kyoto winter, that darkness is often beautifully transformed by the slow, heavy descent of mountain snow. To appreciate this freezing, crystalline world, without ever surrendering to its bitter cold, the ancient carpenters of the city perfected a brilliant architectural feature known as yukimi shoji, or snow viewing screens. In a traditional tatami-matted room warmed by a glowing charcoal brazier, the delicate paper sliding doors are not simply fixed in place. The wooden frame is ingeniously split, allowing the entire bottom half of the translucent paper screen to slide smoothly upward on hidden wooden tracks. This simple upward motion instantly reveals a perfectly framed horizontal window of crystal clear glass positioned exactly at eye level when you're seated softly on the floor. You can sit completely enveloped in the warm amber light of the room, listening to the soft, muffled acoustic blanket of the falling snow while watching the frozen garden slowly turn brilliant white. It is a deeply comforting physical realization that we can safely engage with the coldest, most difficult parts of the outside world, as long as we view them from a deeply anchored place of internal warmth and absolute, protected safety. When the heavy snows eventually begin to soften and melt, the freezing water filters deep into the dark, mineral-rich earth, eventually bubbling back to the surface in the pristine, ancient springs of Shimogamo Shrine. This incredibly pure, continuously flowing water is the site of the ancient Mitarashi Purification Festival. But the true, lingering cultural impact of this sacred spring is actually found in a humble, universally beloved confection, Mitarashi Dango. Centuries ago, the local tea house owners watched the perfectly round, clear bubbles of pure water rising rhythmically to the surface of the sacred spring. Inspired by this elegant natural geometry, they shaped soft, sweet rice flour dough into small, perfectly round spheres, skewering 5 of them onto a thin bamboo stick. The top dumpling is traditionally spaced slightly apart from the other 4, subtly representing the head and limbs of the human body, acting as a sweet, edible talisman of protection and good health. The dumplings are gently roasted over hot coals until they bear a slight smoky char and are then heavily draped in a warm, thick, perfectly balanced glaze of sweet soy sauce. The resting mind deeply appreciates this kind of delicious physical translation. It reminds us that we possess the beautiful creative power to take a fleeting, temporary moment of the natural world, like a rising bubble of water, and transform it into a tangible, lasting comfort that can be savoured for generations. The warm, smoky sweetness of the tea house naturally gives way to a completely different, deeply resonant sweetness echoing through the mist-draped valleys of the Ohara Mountains, located just north of the city. Here, in the sprawling, moss-covered sanctuary of Sanzen Temple, the air is frequently filled with the heavy, hypnotic sound of shomyo. Shomyo is a highly structured, ancient form of Buddhist chanting that relies on absolutely no musical instruments. It is entirely a cappella, utilizing only the deep, incredibly sustained vocal vibrations of the monks. The melodies do not follow modern, predictable scales. Instead, the slow, rising and falling tones were deliberately composed to perfectly map the undulating, rolling topography of the surrounding mountain peaks and the slow, wandering paths of the local rivers. The chanting acts as a sonic mirror of the earth itself. The sound waves are incredibly thick and resonant, designed to wash completely over the listener, vibrating softly in the chest and gently untangling the tightly wound nerves of the body. As you listen to the steady, unhurried cadence of your own breathing right now, the body grows beautifully heavier, sinking perfectly into the mattress. You do not need the loud, complicated instruments of the world to find your center. Your own breath, moving steadily and quietly through the quiet valleys of your own mind, is the only instrument you will ever truly need. Those invisible, deeply textured acoustic waves of the chanting find a stunning, physical parallel in one of Kyoto's most intricate, microscopic textile arts. Hidden in the quiet workshops of the city centre, master dyers practiced the astonishing art of kyokanoko shibori, a highly complex traditional form of silk tie-dye. The word kanoko translates softly to fawn, because the finished speckled pattern perfectly resembles the dappled white spots on the back of a young deer resting in the forest shadows. To achieve this breathtaking three-dimensional texture, an artisan must take a smooth, flat piece of pure silk and tightly bind tiny, millimetre-wide pinches of the fabric with incredibly fine cotton thread. A single high-quality kimono may require hundreds of thousands of these microscopic hand-tied knots, taking a single artisan over a year of continuous silent labour to complete. When the fabric is finally dipped into the deep indigo or crimson dye, and the threads are carefully cut away, the protected silk retains hundreds of thousands of tiny, undyed, raised peaks. The silk is completely transformed from a flat, slippery surface into a soft, impossibly rich, tactile landscape. This art whispers a profound, gentle truth. Massive, beautiful transformations do not happen all at once. They are the quiet result of thousands of tiny, invisible, deeply focused moments of care, slowly adding up to create a masterpiece of enduring warmth. When that exquisitely textured hand-dyed silk is finally worn, it inevitably comes to rest upon the soft, woven rush grasses of the traditional floor. But the floors of Kyoto harbour a very specific, deeply foundational secret that completely alters the geometry of the entire home. In the old capital, the traditional tatami mats, known specifically as kyoma, are physically larger than the tatami mats used in Tokyo and the eastern provinces. Because the mats themselves are larger, the rooms naturally become more expansive, the ceilings are lifted slightly higher, and the entire architectural breathing space of the house is beautifully expanded. But the most brilliant difference is the method of construction known as kiwari. In modern building, a room is framed out first, and the flooring is simply cut down to fit whatever space is left over. But in Kyoto, the absolute unchangeable dimensions of the tatami mat are laid down first, and the heavy wooden pillars, the sliding doors and the roof are completely built around the perfect proportions of the mat. It is a completely reversed, profoundly supportive way of thinking. You do not need to shrink your own boundaries to fit into the demanding leftover spaces of the day. You're allowed to lay down your own soft foundational boundaries first, gently requiring the rest of your life to build itself comfortably and respectfully around your deepest needs for space and rest. Stepping off the soft, perfectly proportioned woven rush of the interior rooms, we cross the cool, stone-paved courtyard to arrive at the heaviest, most intensely fortified structure on any traditional estate, the kura, or the earthen storehouse. These striking two-story buildings stand out instantly against the dark wood of the city, coated entirely in incredibly thick, brilliant white plaster. But beneath that smooth white surface lies a foot-thick fortress of heavily compressed mud, bamboo lattice, and woven straw. The kura was designed to be completely fireproof, acting as the absolute safest sanctuary for a family's most precious heirlooms, ancient scrolls, and irreplaceable ceramics. The massive, incredibly heavy doors are ingeniously built in a stepped, interlocking pattern, sealing the interior completely off from the suffocating humidity of the summer and the freezing winds of the winter. Inside, the air is perfectly still, beautifully cool, and enveloped in a state of absolute, eternal twilight. The mind can simply drift, understanding the immense value of this heavy protective architecture. It is perfectly safe and incredibly wise to build your own internal kura. You do not have to leave all of your thoughts, emotions, and precious energy out in the bright, demanding light of the world. You're allowed to lock the heaviest doors, keeping your most vital energy safely preserved in the quiet, completely undisturbed dark. Resting securely on the heavy iron-studded exterior doors of those ancient storehouses and gleaming softly on the wooden gates of the city's imperial temples is a single striking metal crest. It is the kiku, the beautiful stylized crest of the 16-petaled chrysanthemum. While the cherry blossom receives the adoration of the joyful spring crowds, the chrysanthemum is the undisputed enduring symbol of the Japanese imperial family and the highest marker of longevity. The design is a masterpiece of symmetrical perfection. The 16 precisely measured petals radiate smoothly and equally outward from a perfectly round central core. This specific geometric shape was not chosen merely for its botanical beauty. It was chosen because it perfectly represents the quiet, steady, completely unbiased radiation of the sun itself. Unlike a sudden, violent spark of lightning or the flickering, unpredictable dance of a candle, the sun simply and endlessly radiates its warmth outward in all directions, asking absolutely nothing in return. Gazing at the quiet, golden perfection of this crest in the eye of the mind, the nervous system completely settles. It is a stunning visual reminder that your own internal strength does not need to be loud, aggressive, or constantly shifting. True, enduring endurance radiates softly, evenly, and patiently, glowing with a deep, quiet certainty that will easily outlast the night. The smooth, gleaming metal of the sun crest eventually transitions into a much heavier, deeply resonant form of brass, hanging quietly under the massive sweeping eaves of the local Shinto shrines. Suspended from the thick wooden rafters is the suzu, the massive hollow shrine bell. To ring this ancient instrument, you do not simply pull a small string. You must take hold of the suo, an incredibly thick, heavy, deeply textured rope woven entirely from natural hemp, often as thick as a human arm. Grasping the rough fibres of the rope and giving it a heavy, deliberate shake causes the large brass sphere above to move. The sound it produces is completely unlike the sharp, sustained ring of a church bell. It is a deep, hollow, earthy, chaotic rattle, a heavy metallic clattering of small brass pellets colliding inside the vast, dark sphere. In the ancient traditions, this specific rattling vibration is believed to be the only sound capable of completely breaking up stagnant, heavy energy, clearing the invisible air, and capturing the gentle attention of the divine spirits. As you imagine that deep, hollow, rattling vibration echoing out across the quiet gravel courtyard, allow it to sweep completely through your own mind. It acts as a heavy acoustic broom, effortlessly shaking loose any lingering, stubborn anxieties of the day, leaving the mental air completely clear, fresh, and perfectly still. When the deep metallic rattle of the shrine bell finally settles back into total silence, visitors often step quietly over to a small wooden pavilion bathed in the soft light of a paper lantern. Here, a dedicated monk or shrine attendant performs one of the most beautiful, highly personalized rituals in all of Kyoto, the writing of the goshuin. A goshuin is a sacred seal, a completely unique piece of spiritual proof that you have stood in that exact quiet space. You hand the attendant your personal accordion-folded book, filled with thick, creamy, unlined washi paper. With absolute, unhesitating focus, the attendant grinds a stick of dark pine soot against a stone, creating fresh, deeply fragrant black ink. Using a thick bamboo brush, they write the name of the temple and the exact date in sweeping, bold, magnificent calligraphy directly onto your page. Finally, they take a heavy, intricately carved wooden stamp, press it deep into a bed of brilliant, heavy cinnabar red paste, and push it firmly over the black ink. The contrast of the wet, sweeping black strokes against the perfectly geometric, bright red seal is absolutely mesmerizing. It is a profound, beautiful validation of your existence. Your journey through this world is not invisible. Every quiet step you take, every moment of rest you claim, leaves a beautiful, permanent, completely unique mark on the unfolding pages of your own story. The bold, sweeping, unhesitating black lines of the brush perfectly mirror the deep physical lines drawn slowly across the earth in the city's most iconic, silent spaces. In the incredibly still, enclosed courtyards of the great Zen temples, monks rise long before the dawn to tend to the Karazan-sui, the dry landscape gardens. Their tool is a wide, heavy wooden rake with thick, widely spaced tines. Their canvas is a massive flat ocean of completely pristine, white granite gravel. Their goal is to create samon, the deeply grooved, perfectly parallel lines that beautifully mimic the gentle ripples of an endless, calm ocean. The absolute most astounding fact about this daily ritual is that the monks use absolutely no strings, no rulers, and no measuring devices of any kind to keep the lines so impossibly straight, and the concentric circles around the stones so flawless. They achieve this geometric perfection purely by aligning the heavy, pulling motion of the wooden rake entirely with the slow, deep, unbroken rhythm of their own breathing. They inhale as they step, and exhale softly as they pull the heavy wood through the stone. It is the ultimate physical manifestation of harmony. As you lay here completely safe in the dark, you too are drawing beautiful, quiet lines across the canvas of the night. You do not need any rigid tools or strict rules to find a state of perfect, deep relaxation. You simply need to match your awareness to the slow, steady, incredibly calming rhythm of your own breath, allowing each gentle exhale to pull you deeper and deeper into the quiet, unmeasured perfection of sleep. Deep within the architecture of that restful silence, the mind finds a beautifully resonant echo in the towering mist-draped forests of the northern Kitayama Mountains. For over 600 years, generations of dedicated foresters have silently climbed the impossibly straight, soaring trunks of the local cedar trees, meticulously pruning the delicate branches by hand to ensure absolutely no knots or imperfections ever form in the wood. When this legendary timber, known as Kitayama Maruta, is finally harvested, it is not rushed through a screaming mechanical sawmill. Instead, artisans carefully strip the rough bark and spend hours polishing the raw wood, using only pure mountain water and a handful of incredibly fine riverbed sand. The result is a massive wooden pillar that feels exactly like cool, tightly woven silk beneath your fingertips. This perfect, unblemished wood is traditionally used as the tokubashira, the central spiritual pillar of a traditional tea room. It represents a profound architectural compromise. It brings the wild, towering strength of the ancient forest completely indoors, but softens it through centuries of gentle human care, creating a space where the mind feels simultaneously grounded by nature and deeply protected by the warmth of the home. The impossibly smooth, silky texture of that wooden pillar contrasts beautifully with the porous, earthy, and profoundly welcoming warmth of a traditional rakuyaki tea bowl. Unlike almost all other famous ceramics around the world, a true raku bowl is never ever spun on the fast dizzying blur of a mechanical potter's wheel. It is carved, moulded, and coaxed into existence entirely by the slow, deliberate, and gentle pressure of human hands. The artisan uses a simple bamboo knife to shave away the excess clay, intentionally abandoning all pursuits of flawless, mathematical symmetry. They deliberately leave slight, asymmetrical ridges and soft, undulating valleys that perfectly map the shape of their own palms. When you hold a raku bowl to drink the warm tea, your fingers naturally and effortlessly find the subtle, comforting indentations left by the maker centuries ago. It is a completely intimate physical handshake across time. As your own hands rest quietly by your sides or lay gently upon your chest, you can let your fingers soften completely. You do not need to hold yourself in a perfectly rigid, symmetrical, or flawless shape. The most deeply valued things in this world are often entirely asymmetrical, completely unhurried, and shaped perfectly by the gentle, natural contours of a life well lived. That dark, quiet, hand-shaped bowl waits patiently in the shadows to receive the brilliant, vibrant emerald green of freshly ground matcha. In the quiet, historic tea-producing river valleys of Uji, south of the city, the absolute highest quality tea leaves are never pulverized by loud, high-speed metal blades. They are gently, meticulously crushed between two incredibly heavy, hand-carved granite millstones, known as an ishi-usu. The upper stone is tremendously heavy, yet the artisan must turn it at a remarkably slow, agonizingly precise speed, exactly one single sweeping revolution per second. If the heavy stone is turned even a fraction of a second faster, the microscopic friction will generate heat, instantly destroying the delicate, sweet, grassy aroma of the tea. Because of this profound, intentional slowness, a massive stone mill will only produce a tiny, delicate mound of matcha powder, barely enough for a single bowl of tea, after an entire hour of continuous hypnotic grinding. It is a stunning, deeply comforting lesson in patience for a hurried world. The mind instantly understands that true, vibrant quality simply cannot be rushed. You cannot force a beautiful, perfect outcome by spinning the wheels of your mind faster. You must trust the slow, heavy, steady rotation of time to reveal the finest, most vibrant parts of yourself. The heavy circular geometry of the granite stone eventually lifts from the table, taking the remarkable form of a massive suspended sphere hanging quietly in the historic sack brewing district of Fushimi. Lining the narrow willow-draped canals of vast, dark wooden breweries with towering white plaster walls, hanging prominently under the deep wooden eaves of every traditional brewery, is a sugidama, a massive, perfectly round ball made entirely of densely packed, freshly gathered cedar needles. When the new batch of sake is first pressed in the freezing depths of the winter, the heavy sphere is vibrant, lush, and a brilliant forest green. But the master brewers do not use paper calendars or ticking clocks to tell the local community when the sake is perfectly aged and ready to drink. They simply let the wooden sphere hang in the open air. As the weeks and months drift softly by, the gentle sun and the passing winds slowly drain the bright green from the needles, turning the sphere into a deep, rustic, autumnal brown. It is a completely silent, deeply organic clock. It measures the passage of time not in frantic, anxious seconds, but in the slow, inevitable, beautiful fading of a colour. It is a gentle reminder that some necessary processes in your life simply require you to wait, allowing the natural, unhurried turning of the seasons to do the heavy, invisible work of maturation for you. The gentle, shifting colours of the changing seasons are mirrored with staggering microscopic precision in the hair of the Maiko, the young apprentice geisha, who walks softly through the stone-paved, lantern-lit alleys of Gion. Their elaborate dark hairstyles are constantly adorned with kanzashi, breathtakingly delicate floral hairpins that tremble slightly with every step they take. These beautiful ornaments are not made of real flowers that will quickly wilt and fade. They are created through an agonizingly slow, meditative art called sumami-zaiku. Master artisans take perfectly square, millimetre-wide pieces of pure hand-dyed silk and fold them using incredibly fine bamboo tweezers, pinching them into tiny, perfect petals that are glued together to form intricate blossoms. The absolute most beautiful aspect of this tradition is its strict, loving adherence to the micro-seasons. The specific silk flowers worn in the hair change entirely every single month. In the freezing cold of January, the silk takes the shape of resilient pine and winter plum. In April, it bursts into cascading pale pink cherry blossoms, and in July, it mimics the sweeping green leaves of the weeping willow brushing the river surface. To see a Maiko walking through the dusk is to know exactly where the Earth is in its long orbital journey. It softly suggests to the weary mind that we too are allowed to continuously change our appearance, our energy, and our focus to perfectly match the specific season of life we are currently resting in. That incredibly delicate folded silk finds its elemental opposite deep in the remote, heavily forested valleys north of the city, where the raw, rugged strength of nature is transformed into something impossibly thin and enduring. This hidden region is the home of kuretaniwashi, universally revered as one of the strongest, most resilient traditional handmade papers in all of Japan. The master paper makers do not work in the warm, comfortable, easy days of spring or summer. The absolute highest quality paper is made only in the dead of winter, using pure water drawn directly from freezing, snow-fed mountain rivers. The freezing temperature is the vital secret ingredient. It naturally slows the growth of any bacteria and tightly contracts the long, tough fibers of the mulberry tree, weaving them together with incredible density and strength. The artisan plunges their bare hands into the icy water over and over again, rhythmically shaking the wooden screen until the fibres settle perfectly. The resulting paper is so unbelievably strong that it has been used to make heavy lanterns, waterproof umbrellas, and even woven directly into samurai clothing for over 800 years. As you settle deeper into the heavy dark of your room, you can find immense comfort in this ancient, freezing process. The coldest, most difficult environments do not always break us. Often, they are the exact, perfect conditions necessary to draw our fibres tightly together, forging an inner resilience and an enduring, quiet strength that will comfortably outlast any winter. The incredible woven strength of those paper fibres finds a heavy stone echo in the sprawling, intensely tranquil pond of the Heian-jingu shrine. To cross the wide, reflective green expanse of the water, visitors carefully walk across a winding line of massive cylindrical stepping stones known poetically as the Garyukyo, or the Bridge of the Sleeping Dragon. At first glance, these thick, perfectly round stones appear to have been perfectly carved just for this quiet, meditative garden path. But they harbour a heavy, fascinating historical secret. These massive stones were actually the foundational pillars of two grand 16th century bridges that originally spanned the rushing Kamo River, but were tragically destroyed and completely washed away by centuries of violent earthquakes and torrential floods. Rather than simply discarding the heavy broken ruins of the past, the master garden architects salvaged the weathered pillars from the muddy riverbed and gently repurposed them. They laid them softly into the quiet, still waters of the shrine, creating a completely new, beautiful way forward. As your breathing settles deeper and heavier into your chest, this profound realization acts as a soothing balm. You do not need to discard the broken or failed parts of your past. They can be salvaged, rearranged, and gently repurposed, becoming the exact solid stepping stones that safely and beautifully carry you across the quiet waters of your future. That low winding path of salvaged stone eventually lifts our gaze completely off the ground, sweeping us upward into the high, spectacular wooden architecture of Tofukuji Temple. Spanning a deep, lush, incredibly quiet valley within the vast temple grounds is the Tsutenkyo, an incredibly long, fully covered wooden bridge. Its name translates beautifully to the bridge to heaven. The true, breathtaking genius of this structure is not just its beautiful, unpainted dark wooden beams or its sweeping, elegant tile roof, but its exact, highly intentional placement within the mountain ecosystem. The bridge is suspended directly through the very centre of the upper canopy of thousands of ancient maple trees. When you walk its wooden floorboards, you do not walk above the forest looking down, nor do you walk below it looking up. You walk entirely within it, completely enveloped by a floating sea of translucent green leaves in the heavy summer and a blazing, overwhelming ocean of crimson in the autumn. The massive architecture completely surrenders its dominance, choosing instead to perfectly integrate with the natural breathing elevation of the trees. It is a stunning visual metaphor for living in total harmony. You do not always need to conquer your environment, build a fortress, or rise above your circumstances. There is a profound, breathtaking peace to be found simply by walking straight through the middle of the beautiful, deeply coloured canopy of your own life, moving completely at one with the gentle world around you. The sweeping, dark wooden beams of the temple bridge gently guide us back down into the narrow, winding, stone-paved streets of the city's ancient merchant quarters. If you walk slowly down these quiet alleys, looking closely just above the heavy sliding wooden doors of the traditional townhouses, you will frequently see a small conical amulet tied with a delicate woven rush string. This is a chimaki. During the massive sweltering heat of the Gion Matsuri festival in July, these amulets are carefully folded by hand from vibrant green bamboo grass. In many other parts of the country, a chimaki is a delicious sticky rice dumpling meant to be steamed and joyfully eaten. But in Kyoto, the festival chimaki contains absolutely no food at all, It is entirely hollow, holding only the invisible protective spirit of the ancient festival and the lingering, sweet, deeply earthy scent of the dried bamboo leaves. Families purchase them, hang them above their main entrances, and leave them completely untouched for an entire year, trusting the quiet, fading scent of the bamboo to physically bar any misfortune or illness from crossing the threshold. As you lay here right now, completely safe in your own room, imagine that you too have a quiet, protective amulet resting softly over your door. It requires absolutely no maintenance, no effort, and no worry on your part. It simply exists, standing a silent, fragrant guard over your rest, ensuring that absolutely nothing chaotic, loud, or demanding can cross into the peaceful, heavy sanctuary of your sleep. The gentle, earthy scent of those dried bamboo leaves carries us seamlessly back out to the deep, living bamboo and ancient cedar forests of the northern mountains. Rising out of a misty, silent valley is the ancient, esoteric mountain temple of Kiyomizu-dera. The climb to the main hall is incredibly steep, winding endlessly up a heavily forested mountain path of twisted tree roots that challenges even the strongest and most devoted pilgrims. But to ease this arduous, exhausting journey, the temple operates a completely remarkable piece of modern machinery hidden in the ancient wood. It is the Kiyomizu-dera cable car, officially recognized as the absolute shortest railway in all of Japan. It travels a distance of merely 200 meters up the slope. What makes it truly extraordinary is that it is the only railway in the entire country completely operated by a religious institution. The tiny, quiet car is run by the temple monks themselves, entirely free of charge for those who truly need it. It moves at an agonizingly slow, incredibly gentle pace, pulling you smoothly and effortlessly up through the heavy, fragrant canopy of the ancient, mist-draped cedars. It is a profound, deeply empathetic concession to human fatigue. The monks implicitly understand that the path to enlightenment or profound peace does not always have to be a punishing, exhausting physical struggle. The slow hum of the cable car softly whispers the ultimate comfort to a tired mind. When the mountain of your day has been too steep and your legs are completely weary, it is perfectly okay to step into the quiet cabin, let go of the immense effort, and allow yourself to be gently, safely carried upward into the waiting clouds, where the physical world finally dissolves into a state of absolute luminous weightlessness. As we reach the very peak of our long, unhurried journey, we arrive at the final, quietest secret of the city, hidden not in a grand temple or a golden palace, but in the very atmosphere of the Kyoto basin itself. Throughout this ancient capital, there is a profound aesthetic and spiritual concept known as yugen. It is often translated as mysterious grace or subtle profundity, but its true meaning is found in the specific evocative images used to describe it. The sight of a massive dark sun sinking behind a flower-covered hill, the way a heavy mist drifts slowly through a deep mountain gorge, partially obscuring the ancient cedars, or the sight of a wild swan disappearing into the reeds of a dark, still lake. Yugen is the deep, settling realization that the most beautiful and meaningful parts of the universe are the ones that remain hidden, unspoken, and unseen. It suggests that the true essence of Kyoto, and perhaps the true essence of our own lives, is not found in the noisy, visible achievements of the day, but in the vast, quiet, and mysterious depth that exists just beneath the surface of the silence. As you reach this 101st wonder, the mind can find a final, magnificent relief. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to see the whole path. There is a profound protective grace in the unknown. Like the moon veiled by a single thin cloud, your rest is now complete and perfect, precisely because it is quiet, deep, and entirely beyond the reach of words. The journey through the 101 wonders of the ancient capital is now gently complete. The winding stone paths have all been walked. The rhythmic clacking of the looms has faded into a soft, distant hum. The heavy temple bells have settled back into absolute heavy stillness. There is no longer any need to follow the movement of the river or the light of the lanterns. You can let go of the golden pavilions, the mossy gardens, and the orange mountain gates. They have all done their work. They have created a wide, safe, and beautiful space for you to finally rest. Every image, every sound, and every fragment of history can now dissolve into the dark, like ink falling into deep water. You do not need to hold on to a single detail. You do not need to remember a single name. Whatever was meant to stay with you is already woven into the fabric of your peace. The rest can simply drift away, unguided and unhurried. Your body is now a part of the quiet architecture of the room. It is heavy, warm, and perfectly still, sinking effortlessly into the deep, supportive shadows. Your breath has found its own natural, ancient rhythm, a slow, steady rising and falling, like the tide in a hidden boathouse, or the swaying of a cedar tree in a mountain mist. There is no effort required. There is no task remaining. The city of 1,000 years is sleeping with you. The mountains are standing guard. The rivers are flowing quietly through the dark. You're entirely safe to let the final traces of awareness soften and fade. The world is quiet. The room is safe. The night is endless and kind. The weight of the blankets is the only thing you feel. The rhythm of your breath is the only thing you hear. The soft, welcoming dark is the only thing you see. You're drifting now, moving deeper and deeper into the quiet, unmeasured perfection of the night, where the wonders of the world finally become the wonders of your dreams. And now 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.